at the end of time.
O'clock.
It's like progress.
Hey everybody, what's up?
We're all talk shit before these.
We're always like in the middle of a conversation, like when I'm starting the thing.
Yeah. This is gonna be a good show.
This case, holy crap, you guys. Okay, so it's 2 books.
Yeah.
I had never heard of this, and I kind of feel like a lot of people haven't heard of this. And you know, I'm a true crime junkie. You guys know. But I had never heard of this, and I think even somebody commented on Monday night's show when I said what the show is about. They were like, "Man, I'm from Minnesota where this happened, and I never even heard of this." So it's like, so I'd never heard of it, and it actually, our listener Mutt sent us 2 books about it, both of which I actually did have time to read. You know, I just actually this longer one I just finished like today, because I was kind of taking notes like the whole time. But I did read both of these. Holy shit, this story is crazy, and it's just like not even. I mean, the murders are terrible and bad enough and everything like that, but all the shit that happened after the murders is also kind of insane. So I'm actually kind of surprised that. That this isn't better known. I did look. There were a couple of other YouTube. Like, there was a documentary about it. Actually, there was one documentary about it on YouTube that I thought was about the murders, but it wasn't. It was just about the mansion, like the history of the mansion, which is also interesting. I think there were like 2 other documentaries, like kind of about the murders, but even like some of the big true crime podcasters had not covered this one. So I would really like to thank Mutt for sending me these books, because I don't think I ever would have found this case on my own, and this case was fucking bad shit. This is bad shit.
Yeah, great. She told me a little bit of it.
Yeah, I told her a little bit of it last night, but like all of the details, and I can't cover everything obviously that was in this book, but I was like reading this book going, no fucking way, oh my god, this is like, so this is crazy. I'm like surprised more people don't know about it. But yeah, Zach said that mansion is my dream. It's gorgeous. And I saw like there was a YouTube video of a guy who was just like touring it like inside, because you can tour it. It's a tourist attraction, kind of one of the biggest tourist attractions. It's in Duluth, Minnesota, and it has 39 rooms, and it's gorgeous inside. It's gorgeous. Here's the thing, like, I looked on the website, because a lot of people say, because there's like hauntings and shit too, although I didn't go too much into that. I did watch a video that was about hauntings, but it wasn't really all that interesting. It's just like people were saying like, oh, I heard screams coming from outside the house, and I'm just like, yeah, whoop-de-doo. It's not that big a deal. The real shit that happened around the house is a lot more interesting than like the paranormal shit. So a lot of people said that it's like, oh, you can tour the house, obviously, but the tour guides are under strict orders, like not to talk about the murders. That is apparently not quite the case. I don't think that they talk about it as part of their regular tour guide spiel, but if you ask them about it, they will tell you like truthfully what happened. They don't hide it or anything like that. And the justification that they gave on their website was that, well, you know, yeah, a lot of people are interested in murders and stuff, but that was one night. This house has had like a lot of history that's interesting besides that, and we don't want to focus so much on that. You know, we want to cover all the other stuff too. If you ask us about it, we'll talk about it, but other than that, they don't. So that's kind of what it is. So before we're like, just as a broad outline, what happened with this was that this happened back in, like I said, it's in Duluth, Minnesota. It's a very famous house in that area, like I said, that you can tour and stuff. And in 1977, 2 women were murdered in the house. One of the women was Elizabeth Congdon, who at the time was the owner of the house. She had inherited it from her father, and she was like super, super wealthy. She was like an heiress. At this point, she was fairly elderly. She had had a stroke and was kind of bedridden. She was actually smothered to death with a pillow. Also murdered was her nurse, who I believe is in her 40s, who was beaten to death in the head with a brass candlestick. Now, who they thought did this, and we'll get into all the particulars like in a bit, but who they thought did this was the husband of one of Elizabeth Congdon's adopted daughters, who may be legit a crazy person. I mean, she's not a crazy person, but I think that she has some real issues and is possibly, allegedly, maybe a serial killer. Just depending. She was never convicted of that. She was convicted of some other things. But there are a lot of suspicions floating around about her. As far as I know, she is still alive. I think she would be about 91 years old at this point. She was in prison for a time, but she got out quite a while ago. I believe she lives in Tucson, Arizona. But yeah, I think she's still walking around. But she's 91. I don't think she's going to hurt anybody now. But, you know, possibly a serial killer. For sure an arsonist. She was convicted of that. But this woman, I think I said that when I was telling Tom about the book last night. I just kind of went like that, and I was just like, this fucking woman. And she got away with so much shit. If she did like a quarter of the stuff that they suspect that she did, but probably couldn't prove, like I said, she's legit a serial killer. And she's kind of one of those women that, for whatever reason, is real good at manipulating people into doing shit she wants. Even though she's not like super hot or nothing like that, but she's just like really good at doing that. And she's also one of those people that's she's just always got a scam going. She's always got a scam going, and then when somebody calls her out on it, she like plays the victim. Like, I don't know why you're picking on me. Like, I have all of these health problems, and I'm a wonderful person, and I do this, that, and the other thing. Like, I've known kind of people like that in my life, so I kind of know what they're getting at with that. But I don't know. This fucking shit is just crazy. It's crazy. Zach says, I love mock Tudor houses. I believe it's Jacobean, but I'm not actually sure. That's what it was built to look like, you know what I mean? Because I think the reason it's called Glensheen was because the man who bought it, he was like an iron magnate, and he wanted it to look like the English country houses, like I said, from the Jacobean era, and they called it Glen because it was like in all of these woods and stuff, and then the sheen was from some English village that supposedly his ancestors had come from or something like that. So that's why they called the house that, you know what I mean? But like I said, I'm not even going to be able to scratch the surface of all the crazy shit that this woman did, but I did like take a lot of notes, so hopefully I don't think this show will be 5 hours long. I know I always kind of say that, but it's a lot. It's a lot. So I don't know. So like I said, so I gave like a little bit. Do we have anything that we need to talk about before?
No, not that I know of.
Like anything that we kind of need to cover before.
I think we might be able to roll it. There's nothing hanging or nothing we need to announce. No new Patreons or anything like that.
I don't think. No,
Okay.
I would normally have written that down.
All right. Yeah. Then.
Yeah, Danny said it was Colonel Mustard with the candlestick. Yeah, it is very Clue-like, this murder, except. I was saying to Tom, I was like, this murder, I mean, they were pretty sure they knew who did it, but it's technically unsolved because the person who was convicted of doing it, the conviction was overturned like a few years later, and then they never convicted anyone else of it. So technically, it's unsolved, but everyone's pretty sure that they know who did it. Although it's possible that wasn't what happened, but unlikely, in my opinion.
Iris just reminded you that last week was almost 5 hours.
I know.
Yeah.
I try to but here's the thing. I get and particularly with this case because I had a whole book about it.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of so I had a bunch of notes written beforehand that I got just from various other sources. And then when I started reading the book, I was like, oh, that's good. I got to put that in. Oh, that's good too. I got to put that in there too.
I'll tell you one thing. Long videos, they were really helping me out that fucking trip to Mississippi. And
well, there you go.
I was driving that rented Toyota. And I listened to Wang the whole way. Yeah. And I was looking for his 4 and 6 hour show.
Yeah, it's really good.
It's just it kills a lot of time quickly. If you're working or you're traveling. Yeah, one long one fucking takes
it's
a big
cool
bite
because
out of it.
What I do a lot, if I'm working on if I get a really big graphic design project that I know is going to take hours and hours, I'll usually put on 6 hours of scary stories, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
From B-Busta or Mr. Nightmare or something like that. Yeah, you don't
get as many commercial interruptions. You don't have to choose another one. You just let it ride.
Yeah, you just kind of you don't have to worry about it going and finding another video and stuff. Right. So you can just kind of listen to it in the background. I do that a lot too.
Yeah, Wang's come out with big compilations now. He's posted
those are great, actually.
Great, yeah.
Although there's some on there that I can't watch because they're
too gross.
Because they're too gross.
We're talking about setting cats on fire and catching dudes.
Oh, yeah. Well, the one we started watching, that was the first case
case,
and we were both like, nope.
Yeah. No, I don't like to hear about animal cruelty.
No, I don't.
I can handle human on.
Yeah,
human cruelty.
I know that's fucked up, but it's like, yeah, you can. I can hear about shit being done to humans all day long. Yeah. Not necessarily innocent humans. That kind of is fucked up too. But
at least the human knows what's happening.
Yeah. Anytime like they start talking about like people doing shit to animals, I had a hard time watching that documentary. Don't fuck with cats because. I did watch it, but I was just kind of like, oh god, I hope they don't fucking show the shit because I'm not gonna. I don't want that rattling around in my brain. No thanks.
Animals don't know why they're being killed. They don't
that's
know,
what.
they,
That's
they don't
what
know
I mean.
They've done wrong.
Well, it's like doing it to a baby.
Yeah, it's like doing it to a baby. Yeah.
Which is, you know what I mean? It's like Jesus Christ.
At least the human knows that they've fallen into the hands of a psychopath, and it's not fucking normal what's happening.
Right.
You know.
I mean.
Which helps them fucking understand what's happening. This dude's crazy. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, Wang will do like whole shows about like, you know, the famous, you know, cum jars and stuff like that, and I'm just like, no thanks, that's pretty nasty.
I like those stories.
I can't watch it without gagging.
I think some of it was fake.
Well, I'm sure it was.
I think those dudes, because that was just fucking dudes on the internet trying to gross each other out. It'd be easy for those guys to fake that.
Yeah, it would be easy to fake it, but still, just thinking about it.
Yeah.
Even if it is fake, even just thinking about if it was real, like makes me want to throw up.
Yeah.
So I have a hard time.
Well, that's why they did it.
I know. Well, it worked. Good job.
Yeah.
14-year-old basement dwellers.
Yeah. 14, 15-year-old boys trying to gross each other out.
You made me kind of want to throw up.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's that. Yeah, Danny says long shows are the best though. Yeah, I mean, as long as I don't get like so inebriated that I lose track of what I'm doing.
Yeah, so as we're at the end of them, we're not quite sure what we're talking about.
Well, like I said, the sidetrack show, it doesn't matter as much.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because we're just talking about bullshit anyway.
Yeah.
But these ones I kind of like to keep a little bit coherent. But yeah, so this house here was originally built by, like I said, his name was Chester Congdon, who was a big mining magnate. Now, the interesting thing was that he was kind of like... I know there's kind of a thing that, like, in Americana, that it's just, ooh, these rags to riches stories. A lot of those are kind of bullshit. Like, because I kind of feel like a lot of the people that make a shit ton of money, they came from families that already had shit tons of money. But you do kind of hear the occasional rags to riches story. And Chester Congdon seems to have been one of those, where he came from kind of a working class family. He was a little bit older. Like, I think he was in his 40s. And then he just so happened to come across this... You know, he invested in iron in a place where nobody else thought to invest in it, blah, blah, and he ended up getting super, super, super wealthy. I mean, that's a simplification, but that's basically what happened. So he's the one that ended up building this house, Glensheen. Like I said, it's 39-room mansion. It's on the shores of Lake Superior, and it's beautiful, as you can see from the pictures. And like I said, you can still tour it nowadays.
You going to show the pictures?
No, I don't have pictures of. Well, there's pictures all over Google. I don't need to be doing that.
All right.
You know what I mean? Sometimes I'll get, if there's like a particular video or something I'm talking about, I will. But it's like normally I'm just kind of like, I don't want this to turn into a slideshow again. You know what I mean? So yeah. Now, so here's the thing. So Chester had a bunch of kids. Now his youngest daughter, whose name was Elizabeth. Now she was the woman that would eventually, sadly, end up getting murdered in 1977. But that was his youngest daughter. Now, kind of unusual for the time, because I believe this was around the 1930s that she did this. She never married. Apparently, and by all accounts, I have never heard, and I did quite a bit of research about this, I have never heard anybody say a single bad word about this woman. She was like an angel on earth. They said she was just like the best fucking person. It's like, even when she had all this money, she never flaunted it. She gave to charity, like all this money to charity. She was super generous. And it's like, and she was just like a really, really nice, like a good person. But for whatever reason, she just wasn't into the whole marriage thing. I heard a story that when she was younger, she had a suitor that asked for her hand in marriage, and she was just kind of, she was nice about it, but she was just kind of like, nah, not really my thing, or whatever. And he was cool about it too, which is good. But he was so I guess he was so into her that it's like he took the ring, threw it in the lake or something like that, and he never married. Like his whole entire life, he never married anybody else, because I guess he was just like so hung up on her. So that should tell you something.
He was like, fuck all that.
Yeah, fuck all that.
Yeah.
But yeah, she never married. The weird thing about it, though, was that in the 1930s, which was very unusual, she decided she wanted children, but didn't want the whole husband situation. So she actually adopted a daughter in 1932. And then later in 1935, she adopted another one. So I guess if you have a lot of money, they'll let you do it. Because like I said, very unusual particularly in 1930s to let a single mother. Well, it's even unusual nowadays. They usually like to have, at least somebody that has like enough money that they know that can take care of the kids. You know what I mean? If you're single,
if you got money, it solves all problems.
That's what I mean. So I guess that's probably
yeah.
So that's probably what the case was. Even back in the 1930s, if you had as much money as she had, because she was, an heiress, then you could kind of do what you wanted. So she did end up eventually adopting 2 daughters. Now, it was the one that she got in 1932 that's going to be a source of a lot of the problems. So that one was actually born, her original name was Jacqueline Barnes. Now, she was born in July of 1932 to, I guess, an unwed mother in North Carolina. Now, so Elizabeth goes and adopts her and changed her name to Marjorie. So now her name is Marjorie Congdon. Like I said, this is the woman that will be the source of a lot of the problems. 1935, 3 years later, she adopted another daughter named Jennifer. Now, both of the girls were brought up at Glensheen and had obviously the best of everything. This was an extremely, extremely wealthy family. They had horses. They had pretty much like whatever they wanted. You know what I mean? They went to private schools, boarding schools, all that kind of stuff. Rich people shit. You know what I mean? The thing about Marjorie, though, and a lot of people said this even from when she was younger, was that Marjorie kind of had some problems. Like, she was a little bit troubled, I guess, as she was getting older. People started, like, noticing stuff. Now, it seemed like it was probably the case that she might have needed some discipline and some structure in her life. But I don't think Elizabeth really knew what to do with her other than just giving her whatever she wanted, which is not great for this type of person. But on the other hand, I think Marjorie, considering what we will know about her as the show goes on, I think she probably has like a lot of mental health issues that I don't know if parenting would have fixed. You know what I'm saying? Now, they did say that Marjorie was quite introverted, a little bit, I don't know if I'd go so far as to say antisocial, but she wasn't real gregarious or outgoing or anything like that. She was quite spoiled, and, because she was used to getting what she wanted. She was very bossy. They called her that, too. And later on, like, she was having such problems that at some point, Elizabeth, her mother, didn't really know what to do with her and was advised to send her to, like, a psychiatrist. You know what I mean? So it must have been pretty egregious. So when she was 16, they sent her to this place called the Menninger Clinic in Topeka, Kansas for, like, troubled adolescents. At this point, she was reportedly diagnosed as a quote-unquote sociopath. Remember that for later, because that will definitely come into play. So they noticed that even back then. So this would have been, what, the 1940s or early 1950s? They recognized that there was something the matter with her, like, even when she was a teenager. So there was that. Now, one of the things that stood out to me that was in the book, of something that she did, like I said, she was real spoiled. So she decided that she really wanted a horse, like a lot of girls do. She's a horse girl, and Tom says horse girls are crazy.
They're fucking crazy.
Well,
I worked in the industry.
That is true in this case.
They've got nice
sure.
ones. They're nice. They're nice, but
there's
always
joking.
a streak of crazy in horse girls. Especially if they've been in the industry for a long time. They start getting in their 20s and 30s, and bitches are crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, this bitch was for sure crazy.
Yeah.
I don't think it had anything to do with horses, but yeah. So she very badly wanted a horse. So her mom, who was always, I mean, like I said, her mom was not one of those was like, oh, I'm buying her love or anything like that. She was just kind of like, she had wanted children really badly. She wasn't married, and she's just like, she adopted them, so she appreciated them, so she wanted to give them everything. I think it was kind of more of that kind of situation. So Marjorie really wanted a horse. So her mom bought her a horse, as you do. And after a while, Marjorie didn't really give a shit about the horse anymore. Like, she didn't really want to take care of her. She's just like, care of it or whatever. I think it was a male horse, actually. But she's just like, fuck it, whatever. So at this point, Elizabeth is like, well, you know, we could sell the horse to someone who, if you don't really want to take care of him anymore, or you don't want to ride him anymore, then we'll sell him to somebody who will take care of him and stuff like that. Not too long after Elizabeth made this decision, apparently one of the stable hands or somebody that worked on the estate or something walked into the stable and saw Marjorie in there feeding hay to the horse. And they thought it was a little bit unusual because she, like I said, she didn't really like bother with the horse anymore. So the stable hand was like, well, I wonder what the fuck is going on with that. And then he said that she acted like super shifty. Like she turned around like, oh shit, like she wasn't supposed to be in there. And she dropped some shit and ran out. And they said when he looked in the handful of hay that she had, there was a bunch of pills in there.
She's trying to kill the horse?
So she was trying to poison the horse because she didn't want anyone else to have it if she couldn't. That's what they thought. They did save the horse, though. The horse was fine, and he got sold to somebody else, so it was okay. Because I was worried about that. I'm like, what happened to the horse? He was fine.
She probably had no idea what she was doing. It would take a lot to kill a horse. There was some kind of human medicine.
Probably. I don't know exactly what the pills were. And I think she was a teenager at this point.
Yeah.
So I think her only thought was, oh, well, they're going to sell the horse if nobody else can have it, if I can't have it. Even though she wasn't willing to take care of it. So you can kind of see the sort of mentality we're dealing with here.
Yeah.
Now, the interesting thing about Marjorie and her sister, Jennifer, they weren't particularly close when they were growing up. Marjorie always said that she never felt as though she belonged in the family. I mean, they were both adopted, but the thing about it was that Marjorie, like I said, was very introverted, and she would just like kind of hole up in a room and read, and like, you know, the servants never saw her, and she wasn't real outgoing or anything like that, like I said. While Jennifer was actually a lot more outgoing, and she was real friendly, and, you know, and everybody in the house just loved her to death. Also, Jennifer looked a lot more like their mother, like she was real fair and had blonde hair and stuff, whereas Marjorie was kind of more dark haired, and she had like a little bit of an olive skin kind of thing, so she kind of felt like an outcast, I guess. So there was kind of a lot of stress and tension in the household because of that. So, you know, just to please their mothers, they would kind of, you know, they both were bridesmaids at each other's weddings, but, you know, that, like I said, they didn't really get along, and I'll kind of get a little bit more into that later on after some bad shit happens. But Jennifer eventually married and moved with her husband to Wisconsin. Now, in the early 1950s, when Marjorie had, you know, had grown up a little bit, she moved to St. Louis, Missouri, and ended up marrying this guy named Dick Leroy, which, Dick Leroy, that sounds like...
It's like a porn name.
It sounds like a porn name.
Yeah.
It does, yeah. I mean, his real name was Richard. Leroy doesn't sound as much like a porn name, but for sure, Dick Leroy. Everybody called him Dick. So he was an insurance executive. Now, these two would be married for about 20 years and would eventually have 7 fucking children. They had 7 children. Now, Dick Leroy, I'm just going to say his whole name like that because it's so amusing. He got transferred to Minnesota. So they moved to Minneapolis and then ended up moving to this neighborhood, I think called St. Louis Park or something like that. Now, the neighbors at that point, they said that Marjorie was very, what they called industrious. They said she always had a project going. Like, she was always spending all this money to beautify their houses and stuff like that. Like I said, this is kind of, it'll all come into play, like, later on. Also, one of her other neighbors said that her children always looked immaculate. Like, they always had, like, super fancy, like, expensive designer clothes on, never had a hair out of place. You know, everything was ironed and pressed and everything like that. Said she loved to throw parties. And it was always like super formal. Like, people would come over and she'd have this really fancy, like 3-4 course meal or whatever. Like, she had all the silver and the china and all that kind of crap. And it was just very, according to Dick, the husband, I don't know if he knew that Marjorie was essentially an heiress. The thing about it was that when Elizabeth Congdon, who was the last surviving daughter of Chester Congdon, who was the guy that had built Glensheen Mansion, she was the last one. So when she died, all of the heirs, like all of her children, would get a bunch of money. Like there was a whole bunch of trusts like set up for all of them, and they had even set up trusts for both the adopted girls and like a bunch of Elizabeth's other relations and all of their kids and families. Like I said, this was a very wealthy family. So I'm not sure if Dick knew that his wife was an heiress who was in line to, but she certainly lived like she was one, and she kind of wanted everybody to know that she came from this big, because she was raised in a mansion with servants and shit and had horses and everything. So she was kind of like used to living that way, I guess. So I also heard, and this might have been a little bit later, but this was another thing that I read in the book. Like a lot of people that knew her, they said, well, she was kind of loud and kind of like pushy and abrasive and stuff like that, but she was like super, super generous. She would like buy people like really expensive shit, make gifts for them and stuff like that. So she did have a lot of friends. Like a lot of people thought she was really nice. So like when shit happened later, like about the murders and everything, people were shocked. However, one of her friends did say that being friends with her was like a roller coaster, because they were like, one day she would be like the most generous, awesome, nicest person ever, and she would just give you the shirt off her back and she would do anything for you. And then the next day, like if you did something that she thought was against her, like she would be like super vindictive, and she would just like, so she was kind of like that, you know what I mean? Yeah. I kind of feel like it was, what do they call that?
Bipolar.
Yeah, it might have been something like that. But I was thinking of something else, like not narcissistic personality disorder, but antisocial personality disorder. I can't even remember what it is, but I kind of felt like it was something like that, or it might have been bipolar.
There's a bunch of different ones, and they all kind of read like fortune cookies to me. I go, yeah, I kind of see that in certain people. I see some of that in myself. It's hard to say. The psychology.
Well, the thing about it though is that to be diagnosed as that, it's like there's a long list, and you usually have to have like most of the shit on that list, because everybody has one or two things on the list. You know what I mean?
They're just describing dickheads.
Pretty much, yeah.
Different kinds of dickheads.
Different flavors of dickheads.
Yeah. Fucking dickhead. Yeah.
And this chick, I don't know if dickhead is the right term. I'm kind of hard. I've known people like this, but I'm kind of hard pressed to put my finger on like a word, like a single word that I would use to describe her. Like I said, we'll get more into it. Maybe you can think of something. But yeah, so she was clearly very concerned about her image. She wanted everybody to know that she, one, had a lot of money and had all this refinement and everything, and two, was like a super cool person. See, that's what I mean. I don't know entirely if she actually was, like, if there was some part of her that was like a really cool, generous person that was like, oh yeah, I'll give, my friend this like car or whatever, or if she was just doing that so everyone would think she was awesome. I suspect it was the second thing, because I think she was like they diagnosed her as, I think she was a little bit sociopathic. So I think everything that she did was in service to her own image.
This rum is working out. I'm enjoying rum. Me and Jen have been fucking with the rum past couple.
Yeah, I got a rum and Coke.
Yeah, I got rum and passion fruit that I grew out in the backyard.
Out of the garden. Like I said, that's some organic farm to table shit right there.
And I spiked it with a little bit of lemon juice that I grew on the lemon tree out there. That's right. Making food, bitches. Making food. Making the food that I make the food out of.
Like I said, we didn't make the rum. Although if we grow some sugar cane, I guess we could probably do that.
Make rum.
That sounds kind of hard, but yeah, we could probably.
You gotta get a still.
Yeah, we haven't got to that. We haven't got to that point yet.
You gotta buy a lot of sugar.
Yeah, it is.
There's a lot of things that you need.
Yeah,
it's not free. I'm not sure you could. You could probably make it in bulk cheaper than you can buy it, but it's probably a situation kind of like ice cream. You cannot save money, make ice cream. I mean,
it's
costs
good.
more to make the ice cream than
it's good if you make it, because we used to make it when I was a kid. Yeah. Like, because we had like the little ice cream maker thing.
It requires a lot of cream and a lot of eggs.
It's delicious, but it's not really worth it.
It's not worth the money, unless you probably were to buy it all in bulk and make a shit ton of it. But you probably have to make 50 gallons of it.
Because crap, man, you can go buy. We got some Publix ice cream the other day. I think it was like 2 gallons for $9 or something like that. And that shit's delicious.
No, it was a gallon for $9.
So
it was 2 half things.
Oh, 2 half gallons.
Yeah,
for okay.
Yeah. Publix ice cream is fucking great. It's almost as good. It's as good as Bluebell.
I think it is. Yeah.
Yeah, I got some Bluebell when I was in Mississippi. Bluebell fucking strawberry. Man, that shit was. I forgot how good that was.
I haven't had Bluebell in a while, but you know, we'll get back to that.
We got it back to show.
Oh, actually, or when you go get another drink, like put some more ice in my shit.
Okay.
My shit all please, because it all melted. So yeah. But like I said, a lot of the friends, so like this one woman who was a neighbor of theirs, like after they moved, because they moved around Minnesota for a little while, and some of the houses they had were like large. Like I said, they were trying to put on a good face, like look how much money I have and everything like that. Now, one of the ladies that was a neighbor of theirs said, yeah, man, like Marjorie was so cool, and it's like she like the lady that had once lived in their old house, like she was pregnant, it's just like, man, she gave us all these maternity clothes, and she brought, when I was in the hospital giving birth, she brought me like all these strawberries, and she brought me all this stuff. However, this same woman also said she was like a compulsive liar, which is another thing that a lot of people said about her. So she's kind of a weird woman. So her husband Dick was still working at this point. I think he kind of stopped working later on because she was like, oh, I got all this money, so don't worry about it. But he did have an office. However, Marjorie, who claimed later on that she's like, well, I really never learned to handle money because when she grew up, she just always had whatever she wanted, which I guess that's kind of legit. But she just spent money like it was nothing. Like she would just go and shop. She would just spend thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars, like on shit for her kids, on shit for the neighbors, on shit for the house. She would just spend it like without worrying about it. Now, for a long time, Dick, her husband, didn't know about any of this, but then he starts getting bills, like, because I guess they had joint accounts, right? So he's like, he's getting all these bills, and he's like, what the fuck are these for? I didn't spend $54,000 on whatever it was, and everything like that. He's like, what the fuck is happening? And then she would always kind of like come up with some kind of story, you know what I mean? What ended up happening was that Dick, the husband, would end up asking Elizabeth, his mother-in-law, for money, like to cover the bills, because he's like, we're gonna get like foreclosed on or whatever, because she's spending thousands. That's like she spent money like she had unlimited money, and they didn't have unlimited money.
She thought she did.
She thought she had unlimited money.
Wasn't her money.
Like she had, the thing about it was she had a trust like from her family, but it gave her like a stipend, like a monthly. I don't even remember how much it was. I mean, it was a lot.
Sounds
but
like one of those compulsive shoppers. Like
she just seemed like she just spent and spent and spent, and she just like wasn't even.
They used to have this fucking television shopping channel. What's it called? QVC.
Yeah.
And it was just these people all day long selling you these items and people buying it. It was back before the internet. It was just telephone.
I mean, I'm pretty sure that shit's still on.
It's probably still on.
I think it's still on.
And evidently, like data came out that overwhelmingly, who was buying that was fucking compulsive shoppers, and they were broke older women, single. In trailer homes, trailer parks.
And then they end up being like hoarders.
And they're hoarding, yeah.
Because we see that a lot if you watch Hoarders.
Yeah.
Like, oh my God. The women that are on there, and like I said, I always say this because I feel like the first few seasons of Hoarders, I think they gave like a skewed perception because it was almost all women. Hoarders are more likely to be men, but they hoard in a slightly different way, like for slightly different reasons. Yeah. But the women that they had on there were, they were all about the QVC. Yeah. Either that or they were real into thrift stores. Yeah. Because if you go to the thrift store and you're like, hey, this is only $1. Hey, that's only $1. And then suddenly you spent like $500. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And then they have it in a bag and then they throw it in a corner and they never
even open it.
Yeah. And that's that QVC shit was doing that.
Which is crazy. Well, yeah, because some of them ordered shit from QVC. They never even opened the box.
The boxes.
They just, because the high that they got was from buying the shit. Yeah. They don't really give a shit about it.
And to talk to the salesperson over the phone.
Yeah. Because they're lonely.
Yeah, they interact.
Because there's obviously a lot of emotional issues that they're dealing with via the shopping.
Yeah, and they're buying just costume jewelry and bullshit, little statues.
Yeah, shit that they, and like I said, a lot of times they never
on
even
a
take
credit
it.
card.
They never even take it out of the box.
Yeah, they don't have the money. They just got credit cards.
And I'm sitting there thinking, how the fuck do these people get all of this credit? Like, they won't give me any more credit, that's for sure. And I don't do that shit.
You got all of those credit cards that are fucking maxed out.
Well, I know that, but it's like they probably do too.
You pay it though, at least.
But I do pay them. Yeah, that's what I mean. I do pay them all.
We need to get that shit paid down.
Well, I know, but I'm just saying.
So give Jen a super chat credit.
So I can pay my credit card. I
get credit cards. I got my credit's great.
Well, yeah. Well, you didn't even start.
You find out I married you, probably affect my credit, as far as I know.
Nah, I won't.
You don't think so?
It'll be all right.
Yeah. I got a fucking Citigroup preferred credit card offer saying you're pre-approved for this shit. Fucking just call us.
Yeah, but I get those too.
Yeah.
And like, if you do call them, they're like, no.
Yeah, but I've seen my credit rating is good.
Well, yeah, they'd probably give it to you. They wouldn't give it to me.
My shit is between used to be excellent. Now I'm just very good.
But the thing about it is that,
yeah,
like I said, I know that you were kind of like scared about that, but I'm just kind of like, but I do pay the bills. I'm not late on them or anything like that. So, you know what I mean? So
you just got to get a windfall where you can pay some of that shit down.
Yeah, I would like to kind of like pay. Yeah. And honestly, like compared to some other people I know,
it's not that bad.
It's not really that bad. Yeah. I mean, I don't have that much credit card debt. Like,
I was with her when she spent all that shit.
Well, and the thing about it, well, and the thing about it is that 90% of it was necessities.
Yeah.
I needed it because it's like, oh, I lost a job, and it's like I had to buy groceries or gas or something like that. It just all added up. You know what I mean? A lot of it
in about a 3-month period.
A lot of it accrued like after my divorce.
Yeah, it was about a 3-month period.
You know what I mean? Because I had to buy shit for my apartment, and I had to pay to move and get a new car and all that other kind of crap.
Give me that shit. I'm gonna get it.
Give me that shit.
Give me that shit.
Allison says, I don't like the people who also hoard animals. I know, I hate that. And you always kind of see it, too. Like, on the show, and it's like they have all these cats or dogs or something like that. And I'm like, man, that's fucked up. Making those animals live in those fucking conditions. It's like they've got to be sick. You know what I mean? Ugh, it's awful. And they're just like, they're just living in their own filth. You know what I mean? Because they're just like, oh, we're just going to let the dogs and stuff like shit all over the floor. It's horrifying. Like I said, if you want to live like that, fine. But it's, I mean, that's not great either, obviously. But because they don't know what they're doing. But don't fucking voice that on the animals. They don't know. Tequila says, hey guys, you're doing my show. Got here late, but so excited. I'm glad you're excited. We haven't got too much into it, but we have started talking about it, which is crazy because we don't usually start talking about the actual topic this early, but we did actually. But we haven't even got to. I went over the murders a little bit, but we're going to get like more into it as we go on. We're just talking about Marjorie. And then when we got into the whole thing about her spending problem, then we kind of got off and talking about hoarders. So you know what I mean? So there was that. But yeah, and I get, because like I said, I think one of the justifications she gave like later on, because she did kind of admit, yeah, you know, I have a spending problem. She's like, but she grew up wealthy. So I guess her entire childhood, she didn't worry about money because she could just have whatever she wanted. She would just say, hey, I want this, and her mom would get it for her. So, you know, she didn't really have any boundaries or anything. So I guess when she got older, she was just acting like, well, I can just have whatever I want, you know? Not blaming her mom. I'm just saying, if you grow up like that and then you don't have as much money when you get older, it might be kind of hard to adjust to because you're used to just like buying whatever you want. So maybe that's true. But yeah. So poor old Dick Leroy put up with her shit for 20 years. But the whole time, like I said, they're pretty much going deeper and deeper and deeper into debt. I don't think he really knew the extent of it. And it was softened somewhat by the fact that her mom, Elizabeth, would bail them out most of the time. Like, he would go and ask her, hey, you know, we got this bill for, you know, $12,000 and I can't pay it. And she would write him a check. So it was kind of like that. So they kind of sustained, but after a while he was just kind of like, look, I can't deal with this anymore. I mean, they had 7 kids, and I think he hung around because of that. Because I think he did say later that he's like, well, I didn't really want to abandon the kids. You know what I mean? But finally, like, after 20 years, he was just kind of like, yeah, no, I'm out of here. So he actually filed for divorce in the early 1970s. I think the divorce was finalized in 1971. They determined later, and I think this is an estimate, that over the course of the marriage, she had probably spent about $1 million in back then money, which I don't even know how much that would be in 2023. So like from 1951 to 1971 they were married. Over that time they think that she spent at least $1 million in back then money. One of the things that she bought, and they went a lot into this in Glensheen's Daughter, the book that I read, that tequila set. One of the things that she was, because this lady, she was not only like a horse girl, but she was also like a weird stage mom. She got all of her 7 kids. She enrolled all of them in ice skating classes, and she wanted them all to be like fucking champions, man.
Yeah.
So, and that's not cheap. I mean, you know. So 7 kids. She pays for all of them to go to these ice skating classes. She buys them all of these costumes, like custom costumes and all this other kind of shit. And that costs a lot of money too. And she got all of them into horse riding also.
The fan that sent you the book is in the comment section.
Yeah, I know.
Okay.
So you weren't here for a long time.
Okay.
I already addressed it. Yeah, he said I'm planning a trip up to the mansion in a couple of weeks. Oh, that's awesome. Like, take some video of it and like send it to me. I'm fascinated. I said this earlier, like before you got here, but I was just I was so glad that you sent me these books, because I just finished reading that book like today. Like I was taking notes about it like the whole time, and I was just kind of like, I probably never would have found that case on my own, but that shit was like fascinating. I was like so into it, you know. Let's see. Allison says, Jenny, did or would you guys ever cover the Papin sisters murders? Did we talk about that? It sounds kind of familiar, but I'd have to look it up. But if we haven't done it, then we would probably do it. Yeah.
There's not enough there for us to remember who that was.
Yeah, it sounds familiar though.
Got the 2 twins that went crazy.
That's what I thought. I thought it was, which I think we covered. We did a show about like twins or
twin psychosis or mass
or yeah, like what's that? What do they call that?
What they call it?
Folie à deux.
Folie à deux.
Yeah. Madness shared by 2.
Yeah.
We might have done a show about that where we talked about it, but I'm not really sure. So I would have to look it up. Yeah, Zach says, oh, that would be $7.7 million today, apparently. So they think that that's how much she spent over the course of the marriage. Like, it was $1 million in back then money. But like I said, that's...
And she wasn't even that fine.
No. Well, see, that's the thing. And did I say this like before we started the show? I was like, not to be crass or anything like that, but it's just, it seemed like she was able to just like manipulate people into doing shit.
Yeah.
Even she wasn't super hot or anything like that. I don't really know. I think like her kids were like scared of her.
Yeah.
So I don't know if there was something else going on.
Beware, man. Don't let a woman run through $7.7 million worth of your money and she's not fine. She's fine. You might have an excuse, but she's not fine.
Still don't. I mean,
don't do it. Yeah.
Especially if it's just like buying a bunch of bullshit. You know what I mean?
A bunch of bullshit. Right.
Which this
skating kids and shit.
And the thing about Marjorie is that, and she used this as a defense at her later trial, was that all that money I spent, you know, she gave it as an excuse. Well, you know, I grew up rich, so I didn't really know how to handle money. Which, like I said, that's okay. That's understandable. But she also said, oh, most of the money I spent wasn't even on me. It was on her kids. Which, in a way, is kind of true. She did spend a shit ton of money getting all of her kids into the ice skating shit. Now, it seems like they all kind of liked it, I guess. Some of them were just like, I don't really want to do it. Or they didn't give a shit. Yeah. Her one son, Steven, was real into it, though. And he apparently was, like, real good at it. And he won a bunch of competitions and stuff. But the thing about it was that I will note, and this is not proven or anything like that, but in the book, some of the other people that she knew, like the other parents of the other kids that were ice skating at the same place where her kids were being trained, suspected that she might have been perhaps sabotaging the other children. Like stealing their custom ice skates or fucking with their skates so that her son Steven would always win. They couldn't prove it, but a lot of the parents there did think that she was up to some shit. I also thought this was interesting. So she had their costumes custom made. If she saw some fabric she liked in a store, she would buy all of it so that none of the other parents could have it. So hers would always stand out.
Yeah.
Also, she had a seamstress make them, but she would have the seamstress leave the hems undone so she could take the costumes to the training place and sew the hems so it looked like she had made the whole things herself. So that should give you some idea of like what we're. That's what I was thinking. That's what I was thinking.
Sounds like histrionic personality.
That's what I was trying to think of.
Yeah.
Thank you. I knew you would come up with it if I went.
That's what that sounds like.
Yeah, because I was just like, that's. Yeah. Now, like I said, there's no proof that she fucked with the other kids' skates or anything like that, but a lot of the parents there did seem to suspect.
This is Jenny's real hair, by the way. Look how pretty her real hair is.
When it's clean.
Yeah, when it's clean, she got real pretty.
Well, it's like sometimes I don't feel like washing it, so I just put a wig over.
Yeah.
Because it's a pain in the ass.
She
like
got pretty hair.
Do
you need me to trim underneath there?
Eventually, yeah, because I haven't done it for a while, so it's kind of long.
Yeah.
Might need to but so I just.
Bangs look good though.
Yeah. They're a little bit. I think they're mostly straight.
I like that.
They look better when they're shorter. But yeah, so that was just like a little detail I wanted to write down because I was like, well, that is really emblematic of the kind of personality that we're talking about. Very much into her appearance, like how she looked. You know what I mean? And apparently she was real strict on the kids. Like she was one of those, like I said, it's kind of like pageant moms. You know what I mean? Where they're just kind of like, they're living vicariously through their kids, so they want their kids to be like super awesome, so they're like really hard on them.
Histrionic personality disorder is like narcissistic personality disorder. It's one of the varieties of that. But one of the things is they like to make themselves look a lot better than they really are. They like to think that everybody's out for them, that all men want to sleep with them. It's usually a woman thing. Yeah, attention whore. That's one of the main things with
which those kind of people drive me fucking crazy.
Living vicariously through children, narcissistic personality disorder.
It's messed up.
That's where the children are nothing more than just a reflection of her.
Yeah. So I definitely got a vibe.
Moms,
I got a vibe from that, from the whole time when she was like making them do horse riding and making them do ice skating. Like I said, most of the kids really didn't give a shit one way or the other about it, but the one son was kind of into it, although he quit later on.
They tend to have a real fake feeling facade to them.
Yeah, that's definitely the vibe I got from reading about her.
Yeah.
Tequila said they made I wanted to bring that up. They did make a movie at Glensheen Mansion. This was when This was in 1972, I believe, when Elizabeth was still alive. They shot a movie there called You'll Like My Mother. It had Patty Duke in it. And the weird thing about it was that it was like a thriller, like about somebody going to meet their mother-in-law, and then there was like a murder involved and stuff. And it's just kind of like, 5 years later, something kind of similar happened. You know what I mean? There was for sure a murder. So yeah, I thought that was like pretty weird. It might be a good movie. I don't know. I never heard of it before. But so yeah. Now, right around this time period, too, a house that she owned mysteriously burned down. Wonder what that could be about.
Insurance wires got crossed.
Yeah. There's a lot of that'll be happening later on.
Yeah.
There's a lot.
Happens every
She wasn't even trying to like fucking hide it at some point. But yeah, I don't know if this was the first time that she allegedly did this, but she didn't get. I mean, she was suspected, but they didn't really have enough to prove it, so it just kind of didn't go anywhere. But that was around this time, too. Now, at this point, so her husband, Dick, has divorced her after 20 years. Like I said, they have 7 kids. Like, a lot of them are grown at this stage. But I think she still had 3 or 4 of them with her that were still younger teenagers. So she moves to Colorado. Now, I believe her... Elizabeth Congdon's dad, Chester Congdon, I think he also had some land and property and stuff in Colorado, so that, or maybe it was Arizona, but I can't remember. That's why she moved out there. So she meets her second victim, husband.
No, he's a victim.
Well, in 1975. Now, this was Roger Caldwell. She actually met him. She'd been going to this like self-help group or like a, kind of meeting thing for parents without partners. I don't even know if they have that anymore, but they had that back in the 70s. Like somebody got divorced or widowed or something like that, and they would go, and it was just like a singles type of thing. Now, apparently, he thought she was quite awesome. She was very outgoing and stuff. He was a little more reserved. Some would say maybe able to be manipulated. I would never say that, but, you know, some have said that. So they got married, I believe, only 2 months after they met, which is insane. Now, the thing is, after she married him, now he said later on that he did not know that she was an heiress. He didn't know that she had all this money that coming to her after her mom died and blah, blah, blah. Like, she didn't tell him that at first. I don't know if that's true, but that's what he said. But apparently after they married, she did pretty much the same shit that she was doing when she was married to old Dick Leroy. Just spending and spending and spending and kind of going to mom whenever, whenever they got in a jam, you know. She had a fund at some point, like a trust fund. Like I said, she had more than one. She had some that were, I can't remember what all the details were, but she had there was a bunch of them that were set up by the family, to make sure that all the relatives were taken care of, right? So some of the trusts were like, okay, well, after the person turns 18, they'll get this much every month, or after the person turns 35, they'll get this month, or after this person dies, they'll get this much, you know what I mean? So it was that. So she had several. So she had a trust fund that I think had a few $1 million in it. She blew through most of that. I think after she married Roger Caldwell, she spent another $1 million out of that. She was getting a monthly income as well, which I believe was $4,800, but I'm not real sure. So
Zach don't quote me on that. She sounds kind of like a Joan Crawford kind of a mom.
Yeah, I mean, she does kind of sound like
kind of, but I'm going to disagree a little bit. Joan Crawford was competent. She was a great actress under a lot of pressure because she did not want to be a poor person again. She kind of was self-made and came from nothing. And the way Hollywood was fucking brutal. So yeah, she just did not want standards to slip, and she knew her career was falling apart. You got to see Mommy Dearest. It's a great movie. You guys haven't seen it?
I love that movie.
But she was not histrionic.
I mean,
people with histrionic personality disorder and this type of disorders, like narcissistic, they tend to be incompetent. They're not competent. That's the tendency.
Yeah, I see. I see what you're saying.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah,
Crawford actually was defending greatness because she was falling apart. She was getting older as an actress, and in Hollywood, that's a fucking death sentence. And that's what her problem was. She was getting older.
Not allowed to get older, especially if you're a lady.
Not in that era.
Nope.
Not in that era.
You start getting a little bit of a wrinkle somewhere. They're like, nope, out you go.
And she was a great actress and a sex symbol.
Yeah.
So she was under a lot of pressure. She took it out on her kids.
I mean, there might be some overlap, though, because I was going to say that Joan Crawford was allegedly physically and mentally abusive to her adopted children. And I was going to say, I don't think Marjorie was physically abusive. But then I remembered that somebody in the book, one of her kids, had said that she had tried to, strangle her at one point.
Yeah. Crawford may have had a narcissistic personality.
Yeah.
And a disorder behind it, but it's not exactly what this is so far from what I'm hearing.
Yeah. I mean, you'll see how it gets. Yeah, you might get kind of a thing.
She has money by accident. She didn't earn it.
Yeah, she just was lucky enough to get adopted into a super, super wealthy family and was brought up like that.
Joan made her money.
Yeah. Okay. Through her own...
Right.
Sure.
Through her own prowess.
Which, like I said, you do, even though she was arguably pretty messed up later on, but you do have to give her that. I mean, she clawed her way up from pretty much nothing.
In a really rough time.
Yeah.
In a time where...
And she probably had to do a bunch of fucked up shit.
Yeah.
To get where she was.
A lot of casting action.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah. And as I've said before... The women that become Hollywood stars in those days, if they weren't stars, they would have been prostitutes. That's probably what they would have been. Because that would be... And that's kind of where they would go back to if they lost their career.
Yeah.
So she was fighting to stay above all that. So she was under a lot... She wasn't under normal modern pressures. You know.
But one of the things that is similar is that I do get the impression that Joan Crawford also adopted those kids
to look good.
Yeah,
of course. Yeah.
But I mean, it's slightly a different situation because Elizabeth Congdon, the woman that got murdered, I don't think she didn't adopt the kids to look good. She didn't give a shit about that. Like, nobody ever said that about her. They said she was very private. She gave all this money to charity and didn't want any publicity about it or anything. Yeah. She adopted the kids because she wanted them.
Right.
Now, Marjorie was different, but she naturally had all those kids. She didn't adopt those kids. Those were her 7 kids she pumped out. But she used them for sure the same way that Joan Crawford allegedly used her kids. Like I said, like a pageant mom. She came across kind of like a pageant mom.
Well, I think Joan needed kids for a shield because against the paparazzi of the time, to make her look like she wasn't a slut, that she wasn't available. You know what I'm talking about?
Now, were there... Because I know
she had husbands, didn't she? I think Joan might have been married a couple, but I don't think she had
Well, she was married to the CEO of Pepsi.
Yeah.
Remember?
That's right, yeah.
And then she was on the board, like, after he died. And they weren't happy about that.
I think Joan dated a lot, and she didn't want to look like she was dating, so she had...
Because that was kind of like... I don't think
scandalous
people don't really give much of a shit about it nowadays.
Yeah.
But it's like back in the days of old Hollywood, it's like if you were rumored to be like gay or a lesbian or... like slept around or something like that, like a lot of times the studios would be like, you need to look like Little Miss Happy Homemaker family thing,
right?
Because otherwise nobody's going to come see your movies because they're going to think you're gay or you're a hoe or something like that. So there were a lot of arranged marriages and shit like that. I was like I can't remember what his name was, but I wrote about a case, like an actor, kind of like a B-tier actor, like from the golden era of Hollywood, who was gay, and he actually married his lesbian best friend just so they could look, she was like a beard.
Yeah.
I mean, they knew what was going on. Like, they went into it just so he wouldn't, like, lose jobs.
Now, there were a few Hollywood stars, female stars, that got the hoe angle to work for them. One of them would be Mae West.
Yeah.
And she was a gangster girlfriend, and she knew how to work it, and she was fucking funny.
We've kind of been wanting to do a show about her, actually. I love Mae West.
She was open about what she did.
But I feel she could only get away with that. Like
only she got away with that.
Yeah, a lot of people did not.
And they put her in roles that fit that character.
Yeah.
But she was open about interracial relationships, open about dating dudes and fucking them and not being married. She was open about that.
Yeah. Marlene
Dietrich was pretty open about being a lesbian.
Yeah.
But there were only very few that could do that.
Yeah, it almost seemed like there were exceptions.
Yeah.
But most of them could not get away with it.
You couldn't play that role and then you couldn't be that openly and then play like a housewife.
Yeah, you could only play certain types.
You could only play a bad girl.
You had to play a villain or like,
bad girl.
you couldn't be like the ingenue.
Yeah, right, yeah, no.
Like, because no one would buy it.
They didn't want to see
Which I get that. So they were just like typecast.
They were typecast, yeah.
Is what it was. But as long as you played a character that was like that was like slutty or whatever, they're like, all right, that tracks.
West played slut, but funny.
Yeah.
And everybody liked her.
Yeah. Yeah, she totally got away with that shit. Like I said, we should do a show about her.
Oh, we'll do a whole show about Mae West.
Because I love her. And she
wasn't pretty. She was short and sexy and funny. Not pretty, though. But you'd hit if you were a guy. Just because she was attractive.
I would also hit.
She would hit, yeah. Actually, I think she probably would be open to that, too.
That's what I mean. Yeah. See, I like that. I like that openness.
Yeah.
But yeah. Okay, so where was I? All right, so yeah. So as far as I know at this point, like, Marjorie has blown through a few $1 million that came out of her trust fund. She was getting a stipend every month, like, all of that kind of stuff. But she's for sure, like, spent way more than she should have been spending. There was that. She would pay for shit, like, with checks. The checks would bounce. She would go to her mom, and her mom would indulge her, as always. Which she probably shouldn't have done, but, she, like I said, she was that kind of lady. But at this point, in the mid-1970s, Elizabeth Congdon had a stroke. And at this point, she needed nursing care, like, around the clock. And at this point... she had I believe it was 3 trustees of her estate that were supervising shit and like seeing that it went to the right people and whatever. And at this point, the trustees stepped in and said, we are not giving Marjorie any more money because she's obviously spending all of it, and this wasn't what was intended. You know what I mean? Because Marjorie would come there and be like, hey, I need $50,000 for this, or, you know, $100,000 for that. And at this point, like, her mom would be like, okay, and would write her a check. But at this point, the trustees are like, okay, now that, you know, Elizabeth she wasn't, you know, she was indisposed, I guess. But they're like, at this point, we're just like we're going to advise you to like not give her any more money because she's just blowing all of it. So at this stage, it's 1977, and Marjorie and her husband Roger are pretty much broke because they've been cut off, essentially. Their house got foreclosed on. They had several cars, all of which were repossessed. But for whatever reason, well, I know what probably the reason is, but Marjorie still held on to this pie in the sky kind of fantasy that she still was rich. So she would call real estate agents and be like, hey, I'm going to go look at this ranch. We're going to buy this ranch that's like $1 million. And she would go and tour it. And then she'd say, oh, I have all this money coming, you know, in my trust. And it's like, that's what I'm going to pay for this with. But she would go and tour it, like almost like she was dreaming about this fucking life that she obviously could not afford anymore. And she's like, yeah, my mom was going to pay for all of it. And at this point, they wanted to buy a ranch. One of her excuses was why they moved out to the Southwest was because at this point, I believe it was her youngest son, whose name was Rick, who at this point was 17. He had really bad asthma and like some other health problems. And so she said that his doctors had advised them to like move somewhere warmer because they were from Minnesota, you know what I mean? So it's just like the cold weather was exacerbating the asthma, blah, blah, blah. I don't know if that was true. But they're like, okay, we want to live like where it's kind of warm and dry. So they are wanting to move to Colorado. Now, so as I said, this is 1977. And at this point, they've pretty much come to the point where they don't really have any money left. And this is right around the time that the murder happened. So in June of 1977, Marjorie's mom, Elizabeth, she was in her bedroom on the second floor in Minnesota in Glensheen. Now, across the hall from her was where her nurse would stay. Now, she had several nurses, obviously, that would come in like for long shifts or whatever. Now, on this particular night, the nurse was named Velma Piatila, I think is how you pronounce her last name. Piatila or Piatia, I'm not really sure. I think it's just one L, so that's just usually like an L, right? I thought it was double L if it was like a Y sound, but I can't remember.
2 L's probably.
That's what I thought. But her name only has 1 L, so I think it's Piatila.
Okay.
So she was the nurse on duty that night. This fucking saddest thing, one of the saddest things about this to me. Velma had actually been Miss Congdon's nurse for a long time, but she had retired a month before. The only reason she was working this particular night was because the nurse that would normally be there had like some other shit going on and couldn't come. And so they had asked Velma to come back even though she'd been retired for a month. And Velma hated working the overnight shift, and her husband was like, man, please don't go. It's like, you know what I mean? It's like, you've been retired, please stay retired, you know what I mean? Like, she wanted to hang out with her husband. They wanted to have retirement together. But she's like, no, I'll just do it this one time. That just makes me so sad. Because, spoiler alert, she got murdered. So she was only there for this one night because she had to fill in. Now, so she basically is there that night, and the lady is there. I think there was only one other staff member that lived in the house, which I believe was the cook. They had some other staff members, which was like a groundskeeper and stuff like that, but they didn't live in the actual house. I think they lived in other buildings, like on the property. You know what I mean? Because it's like an estate. So I think there were only maybe maximum 3 people in the house this particular night. I'm not entirely sure if that's true, but that's the impression that I got. The next morning, early, like 7 a.m., the day nurse arrives to relieve the night nurse. Her name is Mildred Garview. She comes to the house, and the front door is unlocked, which she finds very unusual. So she kind of stops in. She says hi to the cook, who's in the kitchen. The cook doesn't seem to nothing amiss. And then she starts going up the stairs toward Elizabeth's bedroom. And she sees Velma lying on the landing of the staircase, because I saw pictures of it. There's like a window seat, like a long window seat, a bench. And she's laying on there. And Mildred's kind of like, well, that's really weird. Is she like sleeping, or what's that about? You know what I mean? So she comes up closer and then sees that she's basically covered with blood. And is clearly quite dead. So she freaks out, runs up the rest of the stairs to Elizabeth's bedroom, and goes in there. And Elizabeth is laying there in her bed with this pink satin pillow that had like a thing of blood on it. Like, just, it was still over her face. And she had clearly been smothered with it. The room was also in massive disarray. It looked like somebody had ransacked the place. There was just jewelry all over the floor. Other pillows and shit like that, just like all over the place. So like I said, it looked like somebody had come in and like robbed them and killed the women. So Mildred runs back downstairs and calls the police, obviously. At this point, they did not know if the killer was still in the house or not, because they didn't know when this had happened. So basically the nurse, stays on the phone just in case, the dude is still in the house or whatever. So the cops show up. Now, they didn't find it. They went through the house. Obviously, the killer was gone. They thought at that stage that the killer had gained entry by breaking a window in the billiard room on the lowest level of the house. Because what there was, from the description, and like I saw the blueprints of what they were talking about, there was kind of like an outdoor, not like a screened-in porch, but like an outdoor porchy patio kind of area, like along the back of the house. And the windows had been taken out of that for whatever reason. I don't know if they were repairing them or if they just did that for the season or whatever. So they thought that the killer had just climbed in through that window and then had maybe punched in or busted in with a rock, like the window into the billiard room, and then had gone up the stairs. They said apparently they were maybe just intending to ransack Elizabeth's room and steal her shit. But then like the maid, or the nurse rather, had confronted them on the stairs, at which point they busted her head in with a brass candlestick, which was kind of sitting there. You know what I mean? So they think that that's kind of what happened. So yeah, she had a fractured skull. It was a mess. Now they did find the cops. They did an okay job. I feel like they maybe didn't do a great job, but okay. They did find a few strands of dark hair in the nurse's hand, like clutched in the hand, like she had fought with her attacker. Now she had black hair as well, so they didn't know if it was hers, but because it was 1977, so they didn't have like the forensic shit that we have nowadays. So they there were a couple things missing from Elizabeth's room. There was the diamond ring that she always wore on her finger was gone. The gold watch that she always had on her wrist was also gone. And later on, and this was pretty weird, she had this ancient coin. It was like a Byzantine era coin. So it was like a couple thousand years old. That was also
about
missing.
1700.
That was also missing.
Yeah.
So, and there was also like this wicker basket that had been in the room that was also gone. So they thought that the person, like I said, had broken in through the billiard room, gone up the stairs, met the nurse on the stairs, and then when she started screaming or whatever, like busted her in the head, then went up and smothered Elizabeth, and then ransacked the room, took all the shit. They also thought that he had gone into a little bathroom across the hall, and washed up. They didn't find any fingerprints in there, but they did find like some blood residue. Now then, he apparently went through the purse of the nurse that he just killed, Velma, and found her car keys and stole her car. So there's that too. And also left the door of the house unlocked as he left. Now, at first, the cops came out and said, well, it's obviously a burglary gone wrong. You know what I mean? So, there was that. Now, they did later find the nurse's car. And it was parked at Minneapolis-St. Paul Airport. But it was parked in a pretty obvious place. It wasn't like they were... didn't look like the killer was trying to hide it or anything. And then in a garbage can at the airport, they found the car keys and, the parking ticket for the car. So I thought that was a little weird. So 3 days after the murder, they have Elizabeth's funeral. And all of the family members come there. Now, when Roger Caldwell, Marjorie's husband, shows up at the funeral, he apparently had some bruises and stuff, and cuts on it, he had a split lip and shit like that. So people were asking about that, and he said, "Oh, I got kicked by a horse," which seems unlikely.
I've been kicked by a horse. It doesn't do that to you. If a horse kicked you in your face, you'd be knock you the fuck out. You'd have black eyes, fucking missing teeth, broken nose. Stop it.
Like I said, just bruises and a little split lip. That seems a little silly.
No, I got kicked in the chest one time. It threw me about 20 feet, 30 feet. We're lucky to have survived it.
Yeah, Oracle said you'd be spitting teeth.
Yeah.
Yeah, you'd think. Yeah. I mean, that's a horse.
Exactly. They're fucking strong. Stronger than any man.
Well, they can kill you.
They can kill you.
Right. Just kicking you like that.
I got kicked in the fucking center of the chest. It fucking threw me about fucking
You're
20,
lucky
30
you
feet.
didn't,
I woke up a few seconds later looking, the horse running at me, fucking making fun of me. Yeah, I got you, bitch. I got you.
This is goddamn, dude.
Knock
I'm a lot littler.
you.
Leave me alone.
Yeah.
You asshole. You're a lot bigger than I am. So they thought that was a little weird. Also, Marjorie was at the funeral. Marjorie and Roger were both at the funeral. And this isn't, obviously this isn't an admission of guilt or anything, but they did say that Marjorie was kind of, I don't know if I'd say cheerful, but they seemed like she was kind of in high spirits at the funeral, and she was kind of dressed inappropriately. In the book, they said she was wearing white slacks and a blue and white flowered blouse, which doesn't seem very funeral-y, does it? So they thought that was a little strange. Now, so the two of them, they came for the funeral. People thought that they were acting a little weird. And then they left Duluth and went back to Minneapolis-St. Paul, and they stayed at this hotel. Now, weirdly, while they were at the hotel, Roger Caldwell, the husband, he, blacked out, and he got taken to the hospital. Now, when they investigated what had caused that, he had a whole bunch of sedatives in his system. Isn't that fishy? But he lived. I mean, he was fine. But it was just a little bit weird. So the cops, at first, even though they said to the public, it's well, it looks like a botched burglary. But behind the scenes, they were kind of suspecting some different shit. Because as soon as it went public that Elizabeth Congdon had been murdered, several of the Congdon family called the police and said, Marjorie did it, basically. They basically said, look into Marjorie and Roger, because they were in a fuck ton of debt. They just got cut off by the trustees. She was in line to, I think on her mom's death, she was supposed to get, I think it was $8.4 million. So there was that. And matter of fact, when they called Jennifer, the sister, they said the first words out of her mouth when they called her and said, your mom's dead, your mom got murdered, the first words out of her mouth were Marjorie did it. That's what she said. And as the police looked into this possibility, family members were telling them some kind of interesting things about Marjorie. For example, many years prior, I believe it was in 1971 or 1972, or maybe it was 1973, I can't remember exactly, but it was a couple years prior to the murder. There had been a big family gathering. I believe it was at Glensheen. And Elizabeth, the mom, had gotten really, really sick. And then one of the family members said, it's the funniest thing, but Marjorie had brought some homemade orange marmalade that she'd made, and she insisted on her mom eating it even though her mom was diabetic. Like, she's like, oh, a little bit won't hurt her. I'm going to make her a sandwich and blah, blah, blah. Now, when they did kind of tests later on, when, you know, because she was real sick and she went to the hospital, they found, like, all of these sedatives, like, in her bloodstream, which were the same sedatives that were found in Roger's bloodstream, like, after. See, because I think, allegedly, after the murder happened of Elizabeth, I think that Marjorie was like, oh, well, I don't need Roger anymore, so I'm going to bump him off. Because that was kind of her MO,
Did they test
allegedly.
the marmalade?
No, well, they couldn't find... Well, see, nobody reported it at the time because they didn't... I think, like, only a family member just thought it was funny, and they didn't really think about it after that. So they didn't have the jar. They didn't have anything like that.
I love orange marmalade.
I know you do.
The thing is, though, is that it's not very efficient to dose an entire jar of marmalade with what it would take to fucking kill a person. Because they're only going to eat a little bit of that marmalade. You know what I'm talking about? I guarantee it wasn't marmalade. If she was poisoned, she's poisoned another way.
Maybe.
The tea or what she was drinking.
What I heard was that the particular sedatives that she was using were super bitter tasting, and she always used marmalade because it masked the flavor better because it was super tart.
But maybe it was in the drink.
It could have been, like I said. But I'm just saying that a lot of the family members had suspected Marjorie of being up to some shenanigans, like, prior to this. You know what I mean? And they just remembered...
jelly, they're not using very much. So that means that most of the poison that you're using or sedative is unused. It's in the damn marmalade jar.
Yeah.
So how much is it going to take? And then you got the jar left over.
They never did find
as
the jar.
evidence.
But like I said, nobody reported it.
So maybe she grabbed the jar.
Because she didn't die.
Right.
It's just that she got real sick.
Right.
And then somebody remembered, hey, Marjorie was like really insistent on giving her this marmalade, so maybe that had something to do with it. You know what I mean? Yeah, but they didn't think about that until later.
What happens when you cook the sedative in with the marmalade? You know what I mean? Because it's cooked first. Does it destroy it? I don't know. I think she's poisoned. If she was, I'm sure she had a sedative put into her. You said there was evidence of that.
Yeah.
Probably wasn't
like
the
there was a very high concentration.
Probably wasn't the marmalade, though. Probably direct somehow. There was another way.
It's possible. Well, like I said, we'll see what you say like after all of it.
Okay. It's just out of the top of my head. It's hard to poison food. They taste it.
Well, that's what I mean.
Cook.
That's
And I know all about drugs.
Well, I mean, not to scare you or anything, but I have read several books about poisons, and it's like there are particular ones that poisoners use for the reason that you can't really taste.
Yeah.
It.
Right.
And if you mix it with particular things, it masks the flavor really well. But a lot of poisons you do kind of have to watch because you can taste it.
Yeah, but then there's also the amount that it takes.
Yeah, that's another thing.
That's a big factor.
That's another thing.
Right.
And okay, so I don't know because this isn't proven. Like I said, she was never convicted of anything. Or she was convicted of stuff, but not this. But the book, Glensheen's daughter, speculated that she had been trying to kill her mom back then, but had gotten the dosage wrong. Because it just kind of made her mom sick. It didn't kill her, obviously. And that was a couple years before the actual murder. So that was what they were speculating. But I don't know if that's true or not. It's just, but everybody in the family thought that, though. They suspected her of doing some shit. Because I guess they knew how she was, and they knew that she was always in debt, and she had this really lavish lifestyle that she couldn't afford. And so she kind of had a motive for bumping the old lady off. You know what I mean? So she could get the money. Because she had a bunch of money coming to her. Like, even though she had blown through a lot of the trust, I'm going to say. But I think she was still up for $8.4 million.
Women have always notoriously been poisoners.
Okay. Well, it's easy. Well, it's not easy. You have to know what you're doing.
It's not easy. It's also not reliable.
No.
But they have been doing it for a long time. Especially back in the 1800s.
It's easier to get away with shit. It's easier to get away with shit. Me
being a male ex-soldier, knowing all about black operations and fucking drug cartels and fucking the way shit's done through the CIA, the best way is always blunt force trauma. Blunt force trauma is always the most effective if you're trying to hide the fact that a murder was done, and the best blunt force trauma is the fall. See, that's why the CIA traditionally, when they killed somebody or intelligence agency killed somebody, usually they just threw them out of a window.
Well, yeah, I mean, that seems like, to me...
It's the best way.
And depending on where you're at, I was like, wouldn't it just be easier to, like, push someone down the stairs or, like, off a cliff or some shit like that? Like, depending on where you were so it wouldn't look suspicious.
Classic.
Or have somebody fall out a window. Whoops.
Classic intel operatives would throw somebody out the window and leave the window open.
Don't, like, shoot them or beat them to death or something like that. Leaves too much evidence.
Then you know it's a murder.
That's what I mean.
But if you throw them out a window...
You have plausible deniability.
You could say, well, it was suicide.
It was suicide, sure.
But that was the old era, before cameras.
Mm-hmm.
Nowadays, they would see the team walking in and out of the building. Possibly in and out of the room.
You'd have to be super sneaky nowadays.
So you'd have to really know the layout.
It's a lot harder to get away with crimes nowadays, which is good. I mean, that's good.
In some ways, having these security cameras around helps you.
Because shit, man, like, reading about a lot of the crimes that happen, because I'm fascinated by, like, poisoner crimes. I don't know why. But a lot of the poisoner crimes that happened, like, in the late 19th century, man, you could get away with fucking anything back then. Well, holy shit, look at, like, fucking Jack the Ripper. He didn't even do poisoning.
Yeah.
He just, like, in the fucking middle of the street.
Yeah.
And he just, like, gutted women in the middle of the street and nobody fucking caught him.
Another backup would, instead of throwing somebody out a window, probably be fucking hit and run. Steal a car and run somebody over.
Also plausible. But still.
Yeah.
Still too messy.
Yeah, but they know somebody was hit and run, but they just can't see who it was. It might have been an accident. You know what I mean? Fucking plausible deniability.
Like I said, I would rather just...
Maybe the person just stepped out of the fucking road, out on the road at the wrong time. But really what it was is, it was a hit team that fucking ran you over. You know, it happens. They still do it.
Yeah. I'm just saying, I don't even know if I would risk that.
Another one that they do, 4 or 5 guys grab you, take you to a wooded area and shoot you in the side of the head, throw the weapon on the ground, a fake suicide note. You went out in the woods and killed yourself.
Yeah, I mean, as long as there's a question about what it is.
Look up my buddy, Tim Van Vacchia. So what is the Army with him? He was in a hit team like that. He's all over the internet. I can show you pictures of me and Tim together, and that's what they did. He and his team killed hundreds of people in Central and South America. At behest of the governments in those countries. And it was shit like that. They would show up as cops and arrest you. In a real cop car. Take you out in the woods and fucking shoot you and throw you into a fucking pre-dug hole. Yeah. You disappeared. Death Squad stuff. Timothy Van Vacchia. Look him up. He's in prison right now. He'll be out, though. He'll be out in a couple of years.
Yeah, Oracle's talking about it. It says, as a diabetic, yeah, that's a red flag. Like somebody saying, hey, you can eat this, it's fine. I'd be like, yeah, are you trying to poison me? Fuck that.
My dad was a diabetic, man, and he fucking broke those rules all the fucking time. He died at 77.
My grandfather was also a diabetic.
Yeah.
And he was constantly sneaking
shit.
Lil Debbie's and stuff.
Yeah.
Like when he could still move around, like he would, because it was a 7-Eleven right next to their house. And he would just like go over there and buy Little Debbie's and whatnot. And he would eat them in his car. He would sit in his car and eat them, and then stuff the wrapper under the. Because I had to drive his car one time because my car broke down, and there's like Little Debbie wrappers all underneath the car seat.
My dad injected himself with insulin all the time. He had the diabetes, and he was the same way. He ate pretty normally, and his explanation was that he got it early, 30s. He's like, what the fuck is the point of living if you can't live? I says, I'm going to eat what I want to eat.
I mean,
I'll just keep it low. Yeah. And he lived to 77.
And I mean, that's probably a good way to approach anything. Because it's like, man, if I couldn't eat like some treats or something good, like every now and then, like, yeah, what would be the fucking point of it? Because I really enjoy that. But you just gotta kind of keep it on the down low. You can't just stuff yourself with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, Oracle said, if I ever eat something carb heavy, my husband gives me a look. Also says, my other question is, does the pH of the marmalade affect the poison's efficacy? Oh, you know. Yeah. This is a lot of the stuff that you gotta like think about. That's why I said like poisoning is not easy.
No.
That's why I think a lot of serious poisoners, I think they try shit out, sadly, on animals, like on mice and rats and stuff, like before.
Well, small doses won't kill you. They probably taste it too.
Yeah.
And then they spit it out. They go, yeah, that's okay.
Yeah. Tequila's, who is the one who sent us the books, didn't y'all do a show on that Italian chick that poisoned a bunch of people and then made them into magical soap or something? Yeah. Was she Italian or was she Mexican? I think she was Italian, but I have to go back and think about it. Yeah, that was a while back, but yeah, that was a fucking crazy ass story.
You said Mexican, man. I thought about that Mexican restaurant up the road. We should go to that.
Maybe we can go tomorrow.
Haven't been in a while, huh?
No, I haven't been.
I got a real Mexican restaurant.
You went without me a couple times, so I haven't been. I don't think I've been since that chick was here.
Yeah, that's right.
And how many years has that been?
Oh, been many years.
So I don't.
It's a lot better than it was. They got a new cook.
So I haven't even.
We got a real Mexican restaurant over here in the middle of the country.
Well, it's all the
farm.
It's half a restaurant and half a Mexican grocery store.
Yeah, and most of the guys that work in this area are not really Mexican, but they are Central American. They eat a lot of the same food, you know. Honduras, fucking Guatemala, fucking whatever, Salvador, and fucking the food is fucking great, man. It's Mexican food.
But like I said, I haven't been there in forever.
Yeah, it's authentic. And it's all the guys that are all the farm hands around here. They eat there.
That's where Tom used to ride up there on his motorcycle just specifically to get that hot sauce, that brown hot sauce.
Yeah.
Because they stopped carrying it at Walmart. Some Walmarts carry it. Sometimes they have it.
Yucateco.
Yeah.
El Yucateco.
Like the super hot brown hot sauce.
It's got a damn Mayan name.
So he'd go to Walmart. It's like, oh, they don't have it today. So then he'd ride up to the Mexican grocery store.
Yeah, and that restaurant is not cheap. It's expensive, but it looks like a little diner. I was showing it to Cado Aslan, my Mexican friend, down in Tijuana. Showed him what I was getting. He goes, "Yeah, that's it, man. That shit is good. Fucking, it's
like
it's
I said.
The same food.
I think you've been there a time or two since then, but I don't think I've been there since. What was that girl's name?
I forgot. Now. I'll remember it in a minute.
That girl that was staying with us from England?
Yeah. She's a British Muslim girl.
Yeah. From
Pakistan. British Pakistani girl. She was fucking hilarious.
How did we meet her? I don't even remember.
I knew her online.
Oh, okay.
And she was coming here.
And she was coming to Florida, and we said, okay, we got a spare room.
She's married now.
Yeah.
Married an Anglo-British guy, and they had a
She was here for several days.
Yeah.
We took her to
that chick took her to the clubs
Escape.
and shit. She was fucking naughty as fuck. It's like she had the Catholic schoolgirl problem.
She did, yeah.
Damn. Aisha,
that's right.
Yeah. Aisha.
I remembered it at the same time you did.
Yeah, Aisha.
That's right.
Yeah, she was funny.
I think that we took her to that Mexican place, but I think that's the last time I was
and it wasn't that good then. It's better now.
Yeah, it was pretty good, but it wasn't.
They had some of the best guacamole. Their guacamole's fucking awesome.
Well, shit, man, now you got to take
tamales.
You got to take me there tomorrow.
We'll go tomorrow.
Either that or we'll go back to that Thai place. I thought you had to return some shit up by where that Thai place is.
I do.
Oh, okay.
We can do both.
All right.
Tomorrow's what? Thursday?
Thursday.
We got to do gym, and we'll go to Mexican place, and we'll drop off the mail.
Yeah.
Returns.
Because I said before, we found a really good Thai place that doesn't even look like it would be a really good Thai place, because it's in like this...
hole of the wall fucking strip mall.
It's in the shitty looking strip mall.
Strip mall. Shit was
and we just ended up there like accidentally because the place we were going to go to didn't open.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh well, there's another one like 3 miles from here, and then we ended up like, oh my god, this is fucking delicious. We're gonna come back here.
Great Thai restaurant. There's a Thai couple running it.
Yeah.
There's only like 3 seats in the whole place. The rest of it's carry out.
Man, it was so good.
Yeah.
I was just like, I was saying, I had pad Thai, and I was just kind of like, oh,
I did Thai red curry, and I got fucking a Chinese dish. I got crab rangoon, but they did it Thai style. They had fucking turmeric in there.
God, that shit was
delicious. Man, it was the best fucking rangoon.
That is the best crab rangoon I've ever had.
Yeah, that shit was fucking.
And I've had a lot of crab rangoon, but that was the best. It was like pillowy inside. It was like a pillow.
Like they had a little bit of egg or something.
Fluffy. Oh, it was so good.
Because I saw that crab rangoon on there as an appetizer, and I was like, I'm gonna fucking order something Chinese into here and see what happens. Fuck, man, it was.
Yeah, good. We were like, man, that's no joke. Yeah. That was really good. That was, I mean, easily by far, that was the best crab.
They're not playing,
I've ever had.
They were not playing.
That's the best pad Thai I've ever had too.
They were good, yeah.
And I just got it with pork in it. All right, so where are we? So we're about halfway through. Halfway through the story. It's okay.
What's the time, Ben?
It's 9:00. So
no, 1 hour ago it says it's an hour and something. So our time's good.
Yeah. We're at about an hour and a half.
Okay,
hour and 20 minutes.
So we might be halfway through it.
A little less than halfway.
Okay. Thanks for coming to the show. Fucking, we love our regular fans. We are fucking getting about half loaded. I'm gonna make you another drink here.
That's only my first drink, honestly.
Is it?
Because you just filled it up with ice. You didn't put any more booze in it.
No, same.
So that's still my first
just remind you that the super chats are open, and fucking we always love to get super chats, and fucking make sure to like, share, and subscribe. And let me go make Jen another drink.
Yeah, share that shit around. Okay. Oscar says, "How about a show about the anthrax epidemic and scare?"
Where?
Yeah.
Oh, back.
We probably should do that. I know we've done
the 9/11
one.
Thing?
Yeah, I know we've done one about like the Tylenol scare that happened back in the Was that the 80s? Yeah, I think we did a show about that, like where everybody's getting poisoned with the Tylenol. But I don't think we've done a show about anthrax. So that's a good idea. We probably should do that. I'll put that in the next poll. Danny says, also what ghosts are haunting this mansion? Is the mansion still haunted? I have heard that it's still haunted. I saw one video on YouTube where they were talking about it. But like I said, I kind of just like, I thought all the shit about Marjorie was a lot more interesting. People have just reported stuff like, the most common thing that I saw reported as far as hauntings go was that a lot of people said they heard like screaming, like disembodied screaming from outside the house and like bangs and stuff when there was no reason for it. I've kind of heard that a lot. But other than that, I don't know if anyone's seen any apparitions or anything like that. Oracle said, yeah, Tim says, damn it, y'all are making me hungry. I know, I'm getting hungry too. All I've had today was a bowl of chili, like honestly. Tom made some chili with stuff in the garden, and then last night or the night before, he went to the dollar store and got some Fritos and some sour cream. And so just put the chili on the Fritos and the sour cream. And it was like really, really good. So it was kind of like nachos. Oracle said, my husband and I have adopted 2 kitties. Aw. Sisters named Freya and Luna. They're 3 years old. Aw, that's so cute. You'll have to send me a picture. I wonder if okay. Our little second kitty, Bambi, our baby, is... I don't know if you can see her.
She's there in that damn corner.
She's back in the corner. Like behind... If you can see like this white framed thing, like behind my thing, this little shelf, she's all curled up like sleeping in the corner, like behind that. And she's been there for several hours. Yeah, Tequila said supposedly there's a picture of an apparition in one of the upstairs windows. Yeah, I saw that. And I saw somebody had taken this weird ass video. This was pretty creepy. I kind of wish I had saved it, but I didn't. But it was somebody had taken some video on the tour of the mansion. And there's somebody like blocking most of the view. But behind the person, there is what looks like a mannequin, except it's moving like a person. It's kind of hard to explain. Because there's a mannequin over here, like in period dress or whatever. But everybody that works at the mansion said, yeah, there's not a mannequin there. But this person or whatever it is, like that's behind that they filmed, it's just kind of like this really weird, it was kind of creepy. I don't know if it's paranormal or not. It might have just been a person that was weird looking and super skinny. But it did kind of look like there was a mannequin behind this person in the foreground. Because you could only see like their arm and like part of their shoulder. And it just looked like a really skinny woman, but it kind of looked like a mannequin. But it was moving like a person. And so a lot of people were like, what the fuck was that all about? Like they thought that was maybe a ghost or something. But which maybe it is. I don't think so. But it looked creepy. I don't have any explanation for it, I have to say. So there was that.
What looked creepy?
No, I was saying that there was a long video about it was like a paranormal channel, and they had done the first part of like the first 20 minutes of it were just a description of the murders and about the history of the house and everything, and then it was like almost like a live stream with like the 3 guys, and they were talking about hauntings and shit that had been reported at the house. And they showed this video, and it's apparently on YouTube, so you can see it. But there was a video somebody took of the mansion when they were on the tour. There's a person in the foreground, like right here. And then behind that person, there's something that looks like a mannequin, but it's moving. Like a person, but kind of unnaturally. Like, it's pretty creepy.
Weird.
And it's like daytime. I don't know what it is. It doesn't look ghostly or nothing, but it's like I couldn't really figure out what it was. And like I said, there was another mannequin over here, But everybody that worked at the mansion said, yeah, there's not a mannequin there. So we're not entirely sure what that is. Maybe it's just another person and the person was just like super skinny or something.
Is that cat going to sleep all show?
Probably.
Damn.
She just really likes to curl up and sleep over there.
Yeah.
She always sleeps in Mommy's office. She is like Mommy's little shadow.
Our voices must be soothing her.
Yeah. She's like, seriously, she's like my little shadow. Everywhere I go, if I get up from my office to go somewhere, hey, where are you going? Where are you going? And then she tries to flop and like give me like pet her stomach and stuff. It's hilarious. But yeah, she follows me everywhere. So I do call her my little shadow. But yeah, so where were we? Okay, so the whole thing, so they think that Marjorie might have, maybe, perhaps, allegedly, tried to poison her mom a couple years before her mom was actually murdered. So, you know what I mean? A lot of the family did believe that. So the cops are kind of taking all of this into account. And they're like, okay, well, we need to, like, look into all of this stuff. Now, they didn't find any fingerprints. They did find a couple of palm prints, though, but I think it ended up that one of the palm prints, because they were like, oh, these are unidentified, maybe one of them is a killer's, blah, 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 but it turned out that the two unidentified palm prints, one of them belonged to another nurse that worked there, and then the second one belonged to one of the cops that was investigating. So, you know, they weren't super careful, as you can see. So, they found, as they were doing the investigation, in a safety deposit box, which belonged to Marjorie and or Roger, they found a handwritten will. This will was dated 3 days before the murders. On this will, Marjorie was signing over $2.5 million to Roger. As I said, when her mom died, she was supposedly going to receive, I believe it was $8.4 million. So the fact that this handwritten will was found in there, giving him $2.5 million, a lot of people speculated that maybe this was the payment that Marjorie had gave him, or like the incentive. Like, hey, look, I'm going to put it in the safety deposit box. I signed it and everything like that. If you'll bump off my mom, then I'll cut you off a slice. I'll give you like $2.5 million. That's what everybody kind of thought. But they did find that will, and it was handwritten. They also discovered that Roger had flown to Duluth, Minnesota a month prior to the murders. And he had gone there alone without Marjorie, even though I believe this was the first time that he had ever met his mother-in-law, Elizabeth. He had never met her before. But he flew to the house by himself, and he went there to ask her and the trustees of the estate, for $750,000 because they wanted to buy a ranch, him and Marjorie. And then they were like, no. And he was like, okay, well, can we at least have $500,000 because we have all these debts and we're going to go to jail. And again, the trustees said no. So there was that. There was also, and this is pretty weird. So remember I said that from Elizabeth's bedroom, there was like that Byzantine era coin? Yeah. So they found... Yeah, they said it was worth a shit ton of money. I don't remember how much they said it was, but they said
1,700 years
ago.
Yeah,
it was like an ancient. So it would have been like super expensive. So they found this envelope. It was in their because when the Marjorie and Roger were living in Colorado, they lived in a motel essentially because they didn't have a lot of money. In their mail slot in the motel was this envelope that was found. Now the envelope was addressed to Mr. Roger Caldwell, but it looked like his handwriting. And like everybody at the hotel and everybody like that said, yeah, that's his handwriting. So it's like he had mailed it to himself, kind of. And it had that coin in it. Now, the thing about it was that they couldn't figure out, they're like, okay, if indeed Roger had mailed this coin to himself, they were like, why would he do that? I mean, it seemed like their theory was, oh, well, he was sending it to Marjorie as a signal that, oh, I did it. You know what I mean? But the thing about it, though, was that it didn't get there until after he got back. So they're like, well, what was the point of that then? Like, they still don't know. Spoiler alert. They still don't know why. Now, they did say that they found his fingerprint on the back of the envelope, okay? And they did say that they thought that it was his handwriting. So it looked like he had addressed it to himself. Like he had sent himself this coin for whatever reason. And it was postmarked in Duluth on the day of the murders, which, like I said, would have placed him in the vicinity when the murders took place, when he was supposedly, because he lived in Colorado. You know what I mean? So that was like a big thing at his trial. The hair that they found at the scene was also similar to Roger's. Not exactly, because like I said, this is the 70s, so they didn't really have like the forensic kind of stuff. And I don't think, here's the thing. They said that the hairs that they found in Velma's hand, like the nurse, were black. As far as I know, Roger's hair at the time, even though he was only, I believe, in his mid-40s, I think his hair was gray. So I'm not really sure if it was her own hair, or I'm not really sure. Like, I wasn't real clear on all of that. But they did say that some hair they found in the house at the scene or whatever was similar to his, similar enough that it seemed kind of suspicious. They also found the blood on the pillow, because they think that, whether he was the killer or not, that he beat the nurse to death on the stairs and then went up and put his hand on the pillow when he was smothering Elizabeth. So there was kind of a blood smear on the pillow. And that blood was the same type as Roger's. Like I said, this is 1977, so they couldn't do DNA. It was just like the same type. And I believe it was type O blood, which is common. I mean, I have type O blood. You know what I mean?
Not a well-planned murder.
Yeah, and I feel like that...
Pretty messy.
In a way, that kind of... Well, okay, spoiler alert, like, he did get convicted at first, but later on when he was exonerated, and the way that his defense attorney, like, laid it out, it did sound like kind of dumb. Like, if somebody was really doing this and they didn't want to get caught, like, they would have gone about it in a much different way.
Right.
So that's the only thing that makes me think that maybe he didn't do it, but I still think he.
So the defense was it was a random dude that came in.
I will say too that Roger was a notorious drunk.
Right. He might have been drunk when he did it.
And well, yeah, he kind of admitted that.
Yeah.
So I mean, he was drunk like all the time. So it's possible that he could have, taken a few nips to, like, build up his courage to do the murder.
Turned out the nurse was there. He had to kill her.
And
too.
then, yeah. So that's why he kind of botched it. He wasn't really thinking about it clearly. So it could have been that. I mean, it could have been just that he was kind of inebriated,
For those of you that are listening to the show recorded, please give us a damn super thanks. That's a feature that we have activated where you can send us basically a super chat, but it's not live. Ain't that some shit? Here comes Pookie.
Hi, Pookie.
So I'm just plugging super thanks.
Thank you for plugging that.
Yeah.
Yeah, Tequila says good old Meshbesher. Yeah, that was the name of the defense attorney. Meshbesher. That was his last name. Yeah, we'll get into that in a little bit. So yeah, so not only did they find this envelope that Roger Caldwell, hey, it's Pookie.
Pookie's coming on the show. She's like, no, I don't want to be on the show.
I don't want to be on the show. You took my wrapping paper away.
Yeah,
she's mad.
She's mad.
She went over there earlier because that's where the wrapping paper. Look, she's still looking for it.
She's looking for the. It's not there.
No, I put it away.
I took it away.
She was like looking and she couldn't find it, so she went over to the bookshelf and like pulled a bunch of books out because she was upset.
Smacked her on her tail. She's like, what?
It's not there, Pookie.
It's not there anymore.
She's just going to sit there looking at it sadly.
Yeah, where's the paper?
Maybe the paper will come back.
If you guys know what we're talking about in the last few shows, she was over there fucking smacking paper.
So it was like Christmas paper, like leaned against the wall over there, and she was
There's
just
no
like,
paper,
yay.
Pookie. I took it away. She's mad.
She's like looking at the wall.
She's looking at the wall where the paper should be.
Where's the paper?
You want me to put it back? I know you do.
No, we're not putting it back.
No,
You'll make too much noise.
because you make too much noise.
You'll make too much noise.
Yeah.
She's like, well, I'm going to go pull some more books out then. That's how
she's looking at Dan.
Oh, uh-oh. Don't wait for him.
They're face to face. They're kissing.
Oh.
Kiss, and she's like,
don't fight.
They're not fighting.
I think they're friends now.
Yeah, they're friends now.
It seems like they're friends now. They're going sniffing each other's faces. I was kind of worried at first because I thought they were kind of...
Yeah.
But they're pretty chill.
They're friends now.
They're pretty chill. So they have this envelope with the coin in it, and they know that the coin came from Elizabeth's bedroom. The handwriting seemed to be Roger's. There seemed to be a fingerprint on there that also matched Roger's fingerprint, his thumbprint, actually. Same blood type, similar hair, blah, blah, blah. Also, when they went into Marjorie and Roger's hotel room where they were living after the funeral, they found a bunch of jewelry in there that looked suspiciously like the jewelry that had been taken from the mansion. Now, they asked Marjorie about this, and her excuse was, oh, well, me and my mom just had a lot of the same jewelry. That's all it is, so this is mine. We didn't take that from there. A likely story. So as I mentioned earlier, they did find the nurse's car later on at the airport and found the keys and the parking ticket in the garage. So the parking ticket had a timestamp on it of 6:35 a.m., which they said would have given the killer ample time to drive from there to Duluth, because I think it was 150 miles. Also, while they were looking through the hotel room, they found a receipt from from the gift shop in the airport. And whoever the receipt belonged to, apparently one of them, had bought a garment bag on the same morning as the murders. And two of the people that worked in the gift shop said they remembered somebody very much like Roger buying the gift bag or the garment bag and putting a wicker basket inside of it, which I thought was kind of weird, but okay. They weren't entirely sure that Roger was the dude, but when they showed him the photos, they're like, yeah, that kind of looks like the dude that came in and bought the garment bag. So at this point, it's evidence, it's circumstantial evidence, right? But they thought, the chief prosecutor thought that there was enough shit to go on at this point. Now, so they arrested Roger 2 weeks after the murders. Now, at this point, they don't know, because this has been such a high-profile case, because one of the victims, obviously, was, this big famous heiress in the Duluth area. So they're like, okay, well, we can't get a fair trial, so they had to move it to Brainerd, which, several miles away. How far away is Brainerd? I think I looked it up, but I think it's 100 miles or 150 miles, something like that. So they moved it, quite a distance away. Now, I talked about the handprints before. They found 2 handprints, and they were trying to say, the prosecution, I think, was trying to say, oh, or the defense was trying to say, rather, that these were, the real killer. But they found out later that they belonged to one of the cops and another nurse that, worked in the house. So, obviously, that wasn't it. Another weird thing that happened was that one of the jurors had to be dismissed because she had gotten a letter, which was unsigned, offering her $10,000 for a guilty verdict. So I thought that was kind of interesting. They never did figure out who sent the letter. I have my suspicions, but they're like, okay, well, that juror obviously has been compromised, so they had to get rid of them and get another one. So there was that. Now, some of the problems were, even though they had kind of all this circumstantial evidence, nobody had apparently seen Roger in Duluth, Minnesota that day. And because this was 1977, it's not like nowadays where if you take an airplane flight somewhere, your name is on the passenger list, obviously. They kind of had that back then, but I don't think it was super stringent. So there were only 2 particular flights that, hypothetically, if the killer had flown from Colorado to Duluth, Minnesota on this particular day, there were only 2 particular flights he could have taken, and his name was not on either one of them. Even though he could have used an alias, because I don't think you had to even produce ID to get on a fucking plane back then, which is crazy.
It wasn't that crazy in the
world.
Well,
that's
then.
why. Well, yeah, but that's why there were so many airplane bombings and shit back then.
There wasn't a computer system, so you couldn't track anything anyway.
Yeah, you couldn't track anything.
It didn't matter.
So it's just kind of so he might have used a pseudonym. That's possible. But they're not real sure because they accounted for most of the passengers that were on there that day. But so I don't know. So they just didn't have any record of him flying on either one of those flights, is what I'm saying. So there was that. And as I said, there's really no motive for Roger to have mailed the coin to himself, if that was what he had done. He got back to Colorado before it got there, because the only thing they could think of was he was sending it to Marjorie, as a signal that he had done the deed. But he's he was going to get back before the coin got back, so that's really dumb, because he would have just got back and said, hey, I did it, you know what I mean? So it just seemed really strange, why that would have happened. So there was that. And the fact that that was so weird was one of the main things that his defense used to basically say that he had been set up. They didn't really come out and say exactly like who it was they thought had set him up. They kind of went into that later when Marjorie went on trial. But they did kind of say that maybe someone was trying to frame him for the murders. You know what I mean? They didn't want to come out and say like who they thought it was, but they're like, because it just seemed really like a weird thing to do if you were trying to, you know, kind of get away with a murder. Like, why would you? And the thing about it too is that the envelope was from like the hotel. You know what I mean? It was like the hotel that he was living in, like the stationery. So they're like that. So that would be really, really stupid if you did that. I mean, I'm not saying that he wasn't stupid. Maybe he was, but they just couldn't think of any reason why he would do that. So, you know. Also, there was kind of a thing where the car that the killer had stolen from the house, which belonged to Velma, the nurse that was murdered, they said that the weird thing was that if you were trying to hide the car, again, they're like where it was parked was like right by the entrance. Like it wasn't like it was way back in the lot or anything like that. Like it was right by the entrance. Like the keys and parking lot were right there in the garbage can. Like they found it pretty easily. So it's like if you were trying to like get away with the murder, that seems like you would try to hide it better than that. That's what the defense was saying. Also, there was a thing where their whole thing was the point of entry was this window in the billiard room, and they thought that whoever the killer was had busted the window open, like maybe with a rock or something like that, and then had reached in and like pulled the latch and opened the window. So they were mostly able to show that Roger's arm was too big to have fit through the hole, or his arm was too short for him to have been able to reach the latch. You know what I mean? Like if he like reached through the hole, because they had one of the cops do it. They set up a mock-up like in the courtroom, the same size as the hole. And they had one of the cops whose arm was slightly smaller, I believe, than Roger's. And he like tried to reach through and he couldn't reach the latch. So they were trying to use that to say that Roger couldn't possibly have done it because his arm wouldn't have fit through the hole that they found. So there was that. Now, so Roger did not testify at his own trial. The trial went on for about 8 weeks, and the jury deliberated for 2.5 days, and then came back and found him guilty of both murders. So he got 2 consecutive life terms in prison, a minimum of 35 years behind bars. But he wouldn't end up serving much of that as it happened. Now, because he got convicted, the prosecutors were like, well, shit, man, if this was the case, we're sure that Marjorie was the brains behind this, because he wouldn't have just gone there randomly and like killed that old lady for no reason. So it's like Marjorie must have been the one to send him there and did it. So we're going to go after her. So they decided they were going to go after Marjorie as the mastermind. Now, so they're kind of going after her for like conspiracy to commit murder, which is notoriously easier to prove, I guess, than actual murder, because you don't have to have necessarily been there. You just have to have been proved to like planned it. You know what I mean? Now, and the thing about it was that everybody knew that she hadn't been there because everybody, like a bunch of people had seen her in Colorado, like when the crimes took place. But they all thought she sent Roger there to do it, and that was that whole $2.5 million will thing, like that was, they considered that like a payment. You know what I mean? So Marjorie gets the attorney, which Tequila's mentioned before, Ron Meshbesher, who was apparently one of the best lawyers in the Midwest, because she had the, well, I was gonna say she had the money. She didn't exactly have the money, but she sure spent it like she had it. But he was like the top lawyer, and for good reason. You know what I mean? It's in the book. They go a long way like toward what his defense was, and it's like, yeah, I probably would have let her off too. Well, I don't know. I wasn't there, but you know what I mean? So the thing about it was that he had the transcript from Roger's trial, so he pretty much knew like how the prosecution was going to come at them, so he could really kind of like prepare a lot better. So yeah. They actually had to move her trial too because the case was so high profile. So they moved that to Hastings. Now, one of the major things that happened during Marjorie's trial was that Meshbesher was able to find not just one, but 2 forensic experts who were willing to come on the stand and say that the fingerprint on that envelope was not Roger's. And they were just like, we don't even know why the original dude said that because it's obviously not his. And because the fingerprint on the envelope was one of the main pieces of forensic evidence, that was a huge deal that he was able to find 2 other dudes who were able to come forward and say, we looked at it and it's obviously not his. It's a completely different dude. Now at this point, also, the defense attorney, because I kind of feel like what they were trying to get at, because she was being charged with conspiracy to commit murder, basically they didn't have to disprove that Roger had committed the murder. I mean, Roger could have still committed the murder. That was fine. They just wanted to prove that she didn't know shit about it, that he'd acted on his own volition. That was fine. Or he didn't do it and it was just a random ass person. You know what I mean? So it didn't matter if Roger had committed the crime, as long as they were just trying to prove that she didn't know anything about it and she didn't plan it. So there was a thing. They had somebody come forward in Colorado. And then there was a waitress in Colorado, even though she didn't say shit at the time of Roger's trial 2 years prior. They were actually able to find her, and she's like, oh, I saw Roger in Colorado, on the day of the murder, right? And there was no way that he could have gone to Minnesota. So there was that. Like I said, it seemed a little fishy because she didn't say anything about it back then, but whatever. But they did get her to say that for Marjorie's trial. Now, the thing about it, so Marjorie, she didn't end up taking the stand in her own defense, but they said it was kind of I don't know if I'd go so far as to say a circus, but she was for sure trying to push the harmless grandma angle, because she was about, I mean, she wasn't that old at this point. I think she was only in her 40s, but she was kind of she would sit at the table and do her knitting. She always had a book that she was reading. It's she was always kind of smiling at the jurors and everything like that. When it was Ron Meshbesher's, that's her defense attorney, when it was his birthday, she baked him a cake and brought it into the courtroom. So she was very clearly trying to give everybody a show. It's just look, I'm just a harmless, lovely person. I would never do anything like that. You know what I mean? Which seems kind of transparent, but whatever. But she was obviously trying to make it look like she couldn't have done anything like this, like they were accusing her of. Now, at first, because Marjorie, man, she fucking loved to talk, and she wanted to testify, but her attorneys strongly advised against it because they thought, they knew her really well, and they were like, she's the kind of person that's going to get on the stand and just say all kind of crazy shit, and we're not going to be able to control her or get her to stick to our narrative. So we just would rather not step into that minefield, pretty much. So they're just we would really advise you not to testify on your own behalf. She was kind of bummed about it, and I guess they had a big argument. But in the end, the attorneys did win. They were just yeah, we don't want you to testify. Please don't. But so the defense was basically trying to put forward this whole thing that they had been framed, essentially. I believe they brought out at Marjorie's trial. I don't think they brought this up at Roger's trial. But I think at Marjorie's trial, they insinuated that the person possibly responsible for the frame-up was Thomas Congdon, who was Elizabeth's nephew, and it was also one of the trustees of the estate. So he was one of the people that, essentially cut Marjorie off from the money because she was spending all of it. So the defense insinuated that it was Thomas Congdon and perhaps a kind of shifty private investigator that he had hired that were kind of gunning to set Roger and possibly Marjorie up for the crime. The argument was that, look, the whole family hates Marjorie. They know that she's in a lot of financial trouble and that she's always asking for money, and they know what she's like. So I guess they were kind of like saying that it's like, okay, well, the family just saw her as like a scapegoat or like a patsy because she had said stuff about getting all this money after her mom died. And so they wanted to set her up because they pointed out, the defense was pointing out, especially the stuff about like the coin being like that Roger mailed to himself and all this other kind of stuff. They're just like, why would anybody do that? It's just like, and why would they have left, like if they didn't want to get caught, why would they have left all the jewelry that they supposedly stole from Elizabeth's room? Like, why would it just be laying out in their hotel room for everybody to find, like, and everybody to see, and all this other kind of stuff? It's like, why would they have just left this evidence laying around? Like, it seemed more like a setup. That's what they were kind of trying to make it seem like. And it seems kind of reasonable, but I don't know if I believe that, though. I think they were, maybe Roger was just an idiot, but, you know, who knows? But that's what they were trying to argue. So, the thing about it was that all of the shit that they did, and like I said, they, in the book, Glensheen's daughter, they go into a long thing about what Meshbesher said at her trial. And the way that he laid it out did kind of sound reasonable, you know what I mean? So I could see how jurors would be like, yeah, maybe they didn't do that shit, you know what I mean? So I could, you know, he was a really good defense attorney. That's why she hired him. He was like one of the best in the Midwest, if not the country at the time. So the way he laid it out did make it sound like there was reasonable doubt that there maybe had been a frame up of some kind, or, you know, there was, or even if Roger had done it, like there was no way she would have known about it or anything like that, because they argued that, you know, Roger was a drunk, which was true, and that he was abusive to her, which was also true, and that she was used to lying because she didn't want people to know he was a drunk because she was embarrassed of him, which is also true. So they leaned hard on that. So they kind of like made her seem like a victim, where it's like, you know, she didn't know where he would go off to bars and get fucked up. He would go off on a toot, that's what he called it. And, you know, and he would just vanish for a day or two at a time, and she didn't know what the fuck he was doing, but she would like make excuses for him all the time. So they leaned hard into that, which, like I said, was somewhat true. So they kind of used that to make her seem more like a victim, you know what I'm saying? Which I don't think was necessarily the case, but it worked. You know, she did end up getting acquitted. Not only did she get acquitted, but she actually ended up, even the jurors came up to her afterward and like hugged her and stuff, like, yay, congratulations. And I think she even went out to dinner with her lawyer and some of the jurors like afterward, because they thought she was so awesome. Like, she was just this little lady that knitted in the courtroom and brought cakes and shit like that. Like I said, she was leaning very hard into that motherly, grandmotherly kind of image, and it totally worked. So she got acquitted. Now, after she got acquitted, Roger's attorneys were like, well, because they introduced all of this new evidence that they didn't have available at Roger's trial, including the fingerprint thing where they had these experts saying that was absolutely not Roger's fingerprint on the envelope, which was one of the main pieces of forensic evidence. They're like, well, then we need to get Roger a new trial also, because that's some bullshit right there. So they filed an appeal. Now, so the thing about it, so the appeal kind of goes ahead, and it takes a while. So he goes to prison. I think it was in early 1978, I believe he was put in prison. So the appeal process kind of comes out. They're like, all right, we're going to grant him a second trial, you know, given all of the new stuff that came out at Marjorie's trial. So they gave him a new trial in August of 1982. So eventually he got like, it was appealed. Like, his conviction was overturned. And he got released. Now, he had spent a little more than 5 years in prison at this point. So he got out, even though he'd been convicted of a double murder.
And 5 is a long time.
I mean, 5's a long time, but yeah.
I guarantee if you bitches did one year in prison, you would think that was a lifetime.
Yeah, I mean, you know, and he looked like kind of in bad shape. Yeah. So they overturned his conviction. What happened, though, was, I think, okay, so what they wanted to do, they wanted to do a second trial, like they wanted to retry him. But they were afraid that he would get convicted again and then go back to prison, because he was free now, and he had like moved back to Pennsylvania. That's where he was from. And so what they had him do was that, because they're like, this is going to be really expensive, and it's like, look, he's already been in jail and blah, blah, blah. So they proposed a plea bargain. Now, at first, the first one they offered him, they said, tell you what, if you confess to the double murder, then we'll just give you another year in prison and then you'll be out. And he was like, nah, he didn't want to do that. Because he'd already, like I said, moved back to Pennsylvania at this point, and he's just like, I want to, like, hold out for a better deal. And eventually, they gave him a better deal. They basically said, you go in front of a judge and confess to those murders, and you're free. Like, it's time served, essentially, is what they said. Because he'd already been in jail for 5+ years. So, I mean, he's not that stupid. So he was like, okay, even though it's going to be on your record, like, forever, like, that you committed a double murder. But he doesn't want to spend any more time in jail, right? So, I mean, that's kind of understandable. Like, I don't know if he did it or not. I kind of suspect he probably did. But, so there's that. So, yeah, that's what he did. So he goes in front of a judge, and he tells them, here's the thing. I read in the book, there is a transcript of what he said at his confession. And even though he kind of said, oh, I was kind of drunk and I don't really remember all the details, which very well might have been the case because he was kind of always drunk. But the way that he talked about it kind of makes me feel like he did it. But some of the stuff that he said was inconsistent to the facts of the case too. So I'm kind of torn on it. Because some of the shit he said, I was like, wow, that sounds like super specific for somebody who didn't do it. You know what I mean? Like the way he described it. Because you have to think that the time that allegedly, if he went there and killed those 2 women, this was only the second time he'd ever been to this house. He'd been to the house the first time, like a couple months prior, to talk to Elizabeth about borrowing all that money, but he didn't, like, go anywhere in the house. He just basically went in the front in the library, like, where he met with her, and she said, no, you can't have any money. And he didn't, like, look around the house or nothing. So he'd only been there, like, one time by himself. So this would have only been the second time that he was there. And the way that he talked about it, I don't know, it kind of made me feel like he probably did it. But then, like, some of the shit he said was not consistent. Like,
now, somebody mentions only 5 years for a double murder.
Yeah.
Was he really convicted of a double murder, though?
Yes.
And he only got 5 years?
Well, no, he got 2 life sentences.
Okay, yeah.
But he got 2 life sentences. All right. But a couple, like, when Marjorie was tried, she was acquitted.
Yeah, and the case changed.
And the evidence that came out at her trial, because she was kind of exonerated him, or they thought they would overturn it. Yeah. Because, like I said, it was the fingerprint evidence mostly, because that was kind of like the main thing that had convicted
that clears
him.
That up.
Right. But I still kind of
do
think
not for one second
he probably did it.
That you can kill 2 people in the United States and only get 5 years for it. No.
Unless you have a shit ton of money. Then you probably won't get any time.
And then there's a whole bunch of corroborating evidence that maybe it was self-defense. Then maybe. But no. Under normal circumstances, no. You could never do it.
No. Like I said, the only reason his sentence was 2 life sentences. Because it was a double murder. And it was, with pre-planning, obviously. But because of the stuff that came out at her trial later on,
most states,
like 5 years later, they were kind of like, oh, well, we can probably get Roger off now, too, because all this new shit came out.
Most states carry a life sentence for murder. Now, manslaughter, that's a different circumstance. And manslaughter is a homicide that would normally be a murder, but but the homicide was conducted under situations where there was enough provocation to deny the defendant calm reasoning and cool reflection, that type of deal. In other words, it was an aggravated thing where people were fucking with it. That could end up being a manslaughter. And just in general, knowing how the criminal justice system is, on average, a manslaughter could be anywhere from 0 to 40 years. So that's still something that's up in the air. You could commit a manslaughter and effectively get a life sentence, or you could commit a manslaughter, and if the judge thinks you had a reason for doing what you're doing, he could give you probation. And that's not normally what happens, though. What normally happens is you get 4 or 5 years. Now, some foreigners might, foreign to the American scene, well, how can you get 4 years for killing someone? You got people in the United States that want to kill each other. You got two men that are fighting, trying to kill one another. One survives it. What do you do with him? Wasn't quite self-defense, but had he not done what he done, he would have died. It would be a manslaughter. Basically dueling. And you could get a couple years for that. Yeah. But that's kind of, for the American situation, that's about right. Yeah. Two guys trying to kill each other, and then the one dude that survives, yeah, you give him a couple years. So he doesn't do it again. But you don't have to fucking throw that guy away. Had he not done what he done, he would have died. You know, he didn't have a choice once the fighting started. They were both trying to kill each other.
Yeah.
So, you know.
Well, that's why we have trials and shit like that, because it's kind of like there's circumstances.
There's circumstances.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Everything's different.
Yeah,
we got to hear everybody out.
Yeah, and that is not necessarily the case in Europe. In Europe, it's going to be very different from that, I would think. But the United States,
not really.
I don't know. Is it?
Not that I ever saw. It's
what?
pretty. It's pretty similar.
It's a bit similar. Okay. Yeah.
Well, our laws came from English laws for sure.
English common law.
So their laws are very very similar.
Okay.
Tequila says, to be honest, the staircase is pretty much a straight shot up from the basement and one right turn to Elizabeth's room. Yeah, I think it was just kind of like, from what I saw in the picture, like I said, it's kind of hard to tell, but it looked like a landing that had like a window. Was it a window or it was just like a bench? It looked like a window seat. I think that's what kind of weird, unless that's not what that picture was, but that's what I saw. Tammy said his wife probably gave him the layout of the house. That's kind of what I was thinking, because it's like, you know, allegedly, she's still alive as far as I know. He's dead. But I do kind of feel like these two shitheels probably planned this. And like I said, I think she sent him out there to do that and said, hey, this is where her room is and blah, blah, blah. I don't think that they knew that the nurse was going to be there necessarily. I don't think they were planning to kill the nurse, but that doesn't make it any better.
Let me address Danny. Danny's talking about my guns and my fucking calf muscles and shit. You go on my Instagram, I got videos of my calves. Because of the army and everything and me working out and fucking being on gear and shit. No, my calf muscles are IFBB Pro level calf muscles. My calves look like it's a couple of fucking rotisserie chickens on the back of my legs. I got big ass calves with V's cut in them. So I'm not like this fucking dude that plays fucking... Who's that actor that plays fucking Thor? What's that guy's name? Blonde-haired guy. The motherfucker skipping leg day. I've seen his legs. He got fucking skinny ass. No, I got fucking good legs, bro. My legs are better than my arms.
You do have nice calves.
Fuck, my calves are the shit, man. They look like fucking chickens back there. It's mostly genetics. But you work out.
Because I mean, you do leg stuff, but you mostly do arms.
Mostly do arms because my arms were actually behind my legs.
Yeah.
But being in the infantry, rucksacks, and go up and down Korea my whole life, and just the shit that I did. As soon as I started fucking going back into training and getting involved in test and gear and shit like that, my fucking calves just blew up. I look back down on them, and they're better than they ever were when I was fucking in my early 20s. I got nice legs.
He's got nice legs.
Got a nice dick too. I got that shit.
You do?
Yeah, that shit's on. I got it fucking recorded, man. Go look at it.
You also have a nice butt.
Yeah,
I also like it. You do have a nice dick. It's nice.
You should see how Jen's looking. Hold on, let me get this camera. Jen is looking so fucking cute. Look at how cute this shit's looking. Look at that. The little feet.
Well, I can't sit normally in a chair.
Yeah. Jen's looking so cute.
I was sitting cross-legged.
Sit up straight, Jen.
I was sitting cross-legged, but you could see my underwear.
Yeah. Put your arms up.
Like,
yeah, look at that shit.
Would you stop?
Okay, all right.
All right,
yeah. No, Jen's been in training, and she looks fucking great right now.
Talk about some shit here.
Yeah. She looks better now than she looked even in her fucking 30s when I first met her.
Yeah, I think I was 38 when I met her.
38 when we met, yeah.
I think so.
Yeah, you look fucking...
Right around then.
She's so much hotter then. You're so much hotter than you were.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, you are. You're gorgeous.
I try. Aw, yeah. You're so nice. You say nice things sometimes.
Why do you think we're throwing down all the time?
That's true.
We're in our 50s now. And fucking, we just did the right things.
Yeah. You don't have to grow old gracefully. You can just be...
No, you can fight it.
Yeah. That's what I'm doing.
Fucking fight that shit.
Zach says, this whole case kind of gives me Dolores Claiborne vibes. Oh, yeah.
Dolores Claiborne. Who was that?
That was a Stephen King novel.
Okay,
Yeah. They made it. Ooh, I don't think we've ever reviewed that movie. That was a good movie. I love that book.
Yeah.
The movie was actually really decent. It had Kathy Bates in it, and what's her name? I can see her face.
Yeah.
I can't think of it. I'll think of it in a second. But yeah, so he did get convicted of 2 life sentences, but because of the evidence that came out. So he basically said, yeah, I totally did that shit. Now he said, like I said, the statement that he gave, it was odd because it was like I said, in some ways it was kind of super specific, but also vague enough that some of it didn't really line up with what really happened. So I'm kind of torn. I don't really, I do still think he did it probably, but I don't know. Some of the shit that he said, kind of made me question that. He basically said, yeah, I did this, that, and the other thing. He waited in the cemetery for a while behind the house while he was waiting for everybody to go to bed. He was waiting for all the lights to go out and everything like that. And he was drinking quite a bit when he was in the cemetery. He was trying to get his courage up. That's what he said. And then he broke in and did the shit. Now, he said when they asked him about, why'd you take that coin and all that other stuff, he basically just said he didn't remember. And he also said that he didn't remember taking the flight from Colorado to Minnesota. He didn't remember taking any of the jewelry. He didn't remember any of that. That's what he said. But I don't know. I don't know if he was drunk and he really didn't remember, or he was just, or he didn't do it and he was just making the story up so he didn't have to be in prison anymore. So he was just kind of I don't know. I don't remember any of the details because he wasn't there, or I don't know. I don't know what the deal was. But his story was that he's well, I just meant to rob the place. I didn't mean to kill anybody. I didn't go there insistent and, meaning to kill anybody. And he's just and that's why I didn't really have a getaway plan, because his quote was, I didn't have any plan. This was the most amateurish, slipshod thing now that I've had years to ponder it. And I'm well, yeah, it was. But he says he wasn't really thinking clearly. That's what he says. Now, even though at this point, Marjorie had been put on trial for conspiracy to commit murder, and she had been acquitted. So because of double jeopardy, she could not be tried again. So it wouldn't have really hurt anything, even if Roger said now, yeah, that bitch put me up to it or whatever, but he would not. He just said she didn't have anything to do with it. She's in the clear. So there was that. Now, so he got out of prison. However, his life was not great after that. He moved back to Pennsylvania, where he was from. And he was an alcoholic, as I mentioned. He got very, very, very fat. He went on welfare. He lived above a bar, which he took a lot of advantage of. And basically got $186 a month, welfare. And that was it. And just wore clothes.
How
from
much
the
a month?
$186.
Well, that's nothing.
Well, yeah, that's
what year was this?
That's welfare. This was in the 80s.
Yeah, 186 wouldn't pay shit even in the 80s.
No. Well, like I said, people talk about people living high on the hog on the welfare. I'm no, they're not. they don't get shit. Even nowadays, you don't. But yeah, I've got unemployment. I've got shit like that. It's nothing. My family got welfare. It's nothing. So he got that, just got clothes from thrift stores. So he wasn't doing great. Now, at one point, he actually contacted the Congdon family and said, hey, if you guys give me a lot of money, I have evidence that other people were involved in the murder. You know what I mean? So the family's okay, well, we're kind of interested. We'll give you $50,000, but we have to have proof that the evidence that you're talking, what is the evidence that you're talking about? We have to have proof that it's something. And he's no, I'll give it to you later, except give me $100,000. At which point the family was nah, bro. And they just cut him off and didn't talk to him anymore. Now, in 1988, Roger committed suicide. He actually slit his wrists with a steak knife.
A steak knife?
Yeah.
That's serrated.
I don't know if it was a serrated one or if it was just like a smooth edge one.
Okay. No, they're usually serrated.
I mean, I know they are, but I think they specifically said that it was like a smooth one.
Okay.
He was at this stage 54 years old. Only 9 people showed up at his funeral. One of whom was the author of the book, of the person that wrote this book.
Yeah.
They found a suicide note. Actually, they found 3 suicide notes. The dude was drunk as shit. They did know that. His blood alcohol level was super high.
When he did it?
Yeah. 2 of the suicide notes were illegible. They were just like scrawled, whatever. The third one, he said, I didn't kill those girls or to my knowledge ever harm a soul in my life. Problem with that, though, was that when he'd been living in Latrobe, Pennsylvania, and he lived with his girlfriend. I don't know what her name was. But a few days before he killed himself, he had beaten the absolute shit out of her, and she was in the hospital.
Because she was bad.
So his whole thing in his suicide note, he never harmed a soul in his life. Not so much. Not so much. He beat the crap out of his girlfriend. And honestly, a lot of the stuff, I wouldn't really necessarily trust anything Marjorie said, but because she seems like a compulsive liar. But some of the children who knew Roger said that he was an abusive drunk, like that he smacked her around too, like when he was fucked up. So there could be that. But yeah, he totally beat his girlfriend bad enough that she had to go to the hospital a couple of days before he killed himself. But then like said that he never hurt anybody. So, you know, there's that. Great. Now, so Marjorie, even though allegedly she had talked Roger into killing her mom, that's what everybody thinks. Like I said, it wasn't proven. I don't know. It does seem like that's what happened, but I don't know. But even that's the story. So even though everybody thinks that, she apparently, once he had done that, if indeed he did it, she evidently had no more use for him. Like I said, she does really come across like a classic sociopath in the sense that people are just objects to be used for a particular goal and then discarded. She seems to have done that multiple times in her life. So she visited him one time when he was in prison for all those 5 years. Now listen to this shit. So in 1981, before Roger got out of prison, she married again. Now this guy was named Wally Hagen. She married him in North Dakota. Now it turns out that she had not legally divorced Roger first. So there were bigamy charges filed against her in North Dakota, but because bigamy is not seen as that big of a deal, it's not, you can't extradite someone to another state for that. They're basically like, well, we can't bring her to another state, like to, you know, convict her for that. You know, she just can't go back to North Dakota again.
Back in the old days, bigamy was widespread.
Well, yeah,
there wasn't really divorce, so people just moved around and married people as they went.
That happened a lot, actually. Yeah. Well, because like I said, back in the old days, they didn't really have like computer networks or anything like that. If you just moved to another state, you could just like come up with a new name and
marry somebody else.
You
could marry somebody else under your own name. It wouldn't matter.
Yeah, no one would find out because nobody could.
People remarried all the time.
There wasn't any way to cross-check.
They remarried while they were married. A lot. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that happened here, but like I said, this was the 80s, and they do have laws against that.
Yeah.
But like I said, it's not considered like a huge like serious crime or anything.
Misdemeanor.
Which which obviously it probably shouldn't be. I mean, it's kind of shitty, but it's not really that bad. You're not hurting anybody.
Well, you're not killing people.
You're not physically hurting anybody or anything like that. So, but yeah, so they're like basically, well, you know, she can't come back to North Dakota. If she comes back to North Dakota, like she might get caught for it. But other than that, like, why would you want to go to North Dakota anyway? Nobody knows. So, so yeah. Now here's the thing. Marjorie had known Wally and his wife Helen for many years, since the 1960s. They actually met because both of their kids were in ice skating competitions. Because remember how I said they were real big into that, like back in the 60s? Now, the Hagens, Wally and Helen, were really some of the few friends that she had that actually stuck with her all this time and thought that she wasn't guilty, right? Now, it's suspected, I don't know if this is true or not, it's suspected that Wally and Marjorie may have begun an affair back then. I don't know if that's the case. But that was kind of the rumor going around anyway. Now, after Marjorie got acquitted, Helen, Wally's wife, got diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and then she got put in a nursing home. Now, a few days after Marjorie visited her and was seen feeding her mashed bananas from some baby food jars, she went into a coma. Marjorie was the last person to visit her. 3 days after that, Helen died. And not too long after that, Marjorie and Wally were seen together everywhere, and then they got married. Now, interestingly, and this was something that you don't see in a lot of the breakdowns, but this was in the book, Marjorie had told everybody at the nursing home, like the staff, that she was Helen's daughter, which she obviously was not. Wally and Helen's actual daughter, they had 3 kids, whose name was Nancy, was like third down the list. Marjorie was the first person to call if something went wrong with Helen. They were not related. They were just like friends, and Marjorie was allegedly like fucking her husband from going back to the 60s. So there was that. You know? So it was just like call Marjorie first, then call Wally, then call Nancy, the actual daughter. So there was that. And Nancy didn't find that out until after her mom died. Like, she went to the nursing home, and they're like, yeah, it says that Marjorie was her daughter, and you were supposed to call. She's like, what the fuck? That's not, it's like, I'm their daughter. What are you talking about? So there was that. Also, after Helen died, Nancy, the daughter, said that Wally, her dad, abruptly told her, with no preamble, like he just walks in the house, I hated my wife for all 47 years of our marriage. I only stayed together for you guys, like for the kids. And Nancy's like, Mom just died, and why the fuck are you telling me this right now? Like, bro,
he's free, I'm free.
That is fucked up.
Damn.
And Nancy says she was 32 at the time her dad told us. It's like, look, if you hated it so much, why? So, like, the kids are grown. Like, why didn't you leave? You know what I mean?
He had no other options.
But he wouldn't answer the question. Like, he just turned around and left.
That motherfucker wasn't good looking anyway. He didn't have any other options. That's what it was. His arrogant ass.
Also,
think about it.
Yeah.
Think about it. He probably didn't like her and got stuck with her. But he couldn't go anywhere either.
Although, I don't see, here's the thing. As we'll go on with this kind of fucked up shit here, but I think that this was a case of Marjorie almost like brainwashed, because he was pretty old at this point. I think she was like fucking with his mind. She was good at that. So yeah. Also, Nancy, the daughter, she also reported she had an arrangement with her dad to pick up her 4-year-old son, whose name was Michael, up from daycare, because she worked a lot. Like, she, worked full time and she had a couple jobs. So he would pick her son up from daycare. One day, he didn't do it. Like, she comes home, she goes up to say goodnight to her 4-year-old, and he's not there. And she goes down to her dad and is like, hey, where's Michael? Oh, I didn't get him. Like, it was no big. What do you mean you didn't get him? Marge told me I didn't have to. That's what he said. Marjorie told me I didn't have to. And it turns out that the kid, because the kid had not been picked up from daycare, they had taken him into state custody and put in a foster home for the night because he needed somewhere to go. And Nancy had to go get a court order to get him back. Yeah. Just because her stupid fucking dad didn't pick him up like he always had before. Because Marge said I didn't have to. That's what he said. Also, it turned out that the money that Wally inherited after his wife died that was supposed to be used to pay like all the bills and stuff also went to Marjorie. So none of the bills had been paid, and Nancy ended up with nothing. She didn't get any of her inheritance or anything. Wally was 23 years older than Marjorie, by the way. When they got married, he was 72, and she was 49. So there was that.
72 and 49, but what an age gap.
Yeah.
72, that's an old man. 49, that's still kind of a young woman.
Yeah, I mean, just not, that's younger than me.
Younger than you, yeah.
So, but see, here's the thing. Marjorie, even though she was not particularly good looking or anything like that, she seems to have had some weird kind of like manipulative power. And I mean, this dude was old. He had his wife was ill and he was taking care of her and stuff like that. But I kind of feel like to some point, like he might have been, I don't know. He seemed like he was like really manipulated by her. So they got married, and not too long after that, a house that they had just sold, they had sold it to another family, but there was like a couple weeks where they said, oh, we're going to fix it up like before you guys take it over or whatever. But in the interim, like the night before they were supposed to, like when they got the keys and they were supposed to move in, the house mysteriously burned down. Now, when the cops look into this, she had kind of had some rumors about her, unexplained fires like happening around her a lot. So investigators kind of like when they found out that she had been the owner of the previous owner of the house, they had like sold it to another couple. They were like, okay, well, maybe we want to look into, because her story was, that Wally, who had been an electrician, he was retired, had rewired the house and maybe the wiring was bad or something like that. And that had caused it. But, there was a lot of shit going on that really looked like, because she still had keys to the house, even though she said she didn't. It was this whole thing. So, at this point, they did arrest her. Like, they didn't have enough money to arrest her for the arson, like insurance fraud, you know what I mean? And they did find evidence, like, she'd never really been convicted, but there were a lot of suspected fires. Like, a lot of people suspected her of, like, committing arson. Now, the same guy who had defended her before, old Meshbesher, he defended her again. However, this time, it did not work. She actually did get convicted this time of arson and insurance fraud, and got sentenced to a women's prison. I think her first sentence was 2.5 years, I believe. So she got released about 20 months later, so almost 2 years later. And then her and Wally moved to Arizona. Like, they moved to this tiny little town called Ajo in Arizona in an RV, about 40 miles from the Mexican border. So Marjorie had told everybody that Wally had cancer and that they wanted to move really close to the Mexican border because there were all these drugs and treatments over there in Mexico that weren't, approved in the United States yet that they thought would help him. So they were going back and forth to Mexico all the time. While they were living in Ajo, Arizona, there was a series, I believe it was just in 1 year, 1990, of 43 suspicious fires, which happened in empty houses and garages in the area. Now, at first, the cops thought it was just kids going around burning shit down. However, one of the fires burned down kind of a storage garage kind of place where Marjorie and Wally kept their RV, their Airstream trailer. So they thought that was a little fishy when they looked into her background. Also, there was this. So they started looking into her. So Wally and Marjorie had been having a feud with their next door neighbor, whose name was Mark. He was 28, I believe. He lived there with his younger brother or something. They said, oh, he's messing with our dog, whose name was Wolf, and, throwing garbage in their yard and shit. I don't know if that was true. I don't believe anything she says. Now, one night, the neighbor, Mark, who was a border patrol officer, he had been a border patrol officer for 4 years. And he heard something at his window, scratching or some kind of someone was trying to pull the window open. Because they were these casement windows they were old houses. They were hard to open. And so he looks out and he sees this rag that smelled like kerosene on the windowsill. Now, he saw what he thought was Marjorie's face. It was his neighbor. He knew her. And he thought he saw her face, outside the window, with her dog. And so he calls the cops. So the cops decide they're going to set a trap up because there's all these fires happening in this tiny, tiny town. So they're it's got to be the same person doing it. So around 1 a.m, the cops come out and they see something. And so they come out and they chase the person. They see somebody lighting a lighter and the rag ignites, right? And Mark and his brother saw it inside too. They tried to take pictures of it, but they didn't come out. So the cops chase the person down this alley and they catch her, and it's Marjorie. So she's trying to set her neighbor's house on fire with the neighbors still in it.
What?
They lived like literally like right next door, and she was like in her nightgown, and she was barefoot and everything.
How old is she at this point?
I believe
50s?
At this point, yeah, I think she's in her 50s.
Bitch, crazy.
That's what I'm telling you.
Bitch, 100%
This fucking
crazy.
Yeah, she is nuts.
That's attempted murder right there. That's not arson.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Yeah.
So they caught her like red-handed. Now she gets charged with arson, and they put her in jail at this point. So she's in jail for 8 months because they gave her bail, but she couldn't, pay it because they're broke at this point. Now Wally, who had been real sick and like in a wheelchair and shit, like while she was in jail, he got a lot better. Interestingly, kind of just gonna say Munchausen by proxy kind of shit going on here is a little bit of what was going on here. Whereas before he couldn't really walk or anything like that, like now he's just like tooling around town. It's like they see him sitting in restaurants, like flirting with waitresses, like acting like a normal dude. I mean, he's in his 70s, but they're like, he was pretty spry. He was like in good shape. Yeah. But while she was around, he always seemed really sickly. So, and then, so Marjorie gets let out, like pending trial. And then Wally started to decline again. And somebody who was kind of acquainted with them said, oh yeah, she gives him all these pills like to help him sleep. Which I don't know exactly what they were, but it was something. Now, so when they put her on trial for the arson, Wally testified on her behalf. Like, he just would not have it. Like, he was just sticking up for his wife and blah, blah, blah. I think he was totally brainwashed at this point. So this was another kind of circus atmosphere. Wally gets brought into the courtroom lying down on a gurney because he's saying, it's like, oh, I can't stand up. I have like all this stuff with my back and blah, blah, blah. And he also brought their dog with them, which he said was his hearing ear dog. Okay. His story was Marjorie couldn't have set the fire because her arthritis in her hands is so bad that she can't even hold a normal size match. So there's no way, because they, when the police caught her, they found like a box of Circle K matches in her pocket. Like, she, you know what I mean? And they're like, she can't even light those because her, her arthritis is so bad. His story was that she had taken the dog out for a walk in the middle of the night. The dog often ran to the neighbor's yard, and somebody had left this meat-soaked rag hanging out the window, and then the dog grabbed it, and so Marjorie went back later to return it, to like put it back where she found it. A likely story. Also, the whole thing about Wally showing up in the courtroom, like on the gurney, some of the that didn't really work because some of the jurors like happened to look out the window when he arrived, and he got out of the car just fine. And then Marjorie was seen like helping him up on the gurney, like pushing him into the like they saw him walking around like normal. And so they're like, yeah, okay, so that seems a little fishy. So her fucking story, they let her testify on her own behalf, which was probably a mistake because she just went on and on. I don't know if she necessarily, I read some of her testimony and she didn't really incriminate herself, but the way that she went on and on, was kind of like, I don't know, it just kind of, I think, soured a lot of the jury against her. And there was just like so much evidence because they brought up, there was a big thing about, because this was just particularly for this, the neighbor, like the attempted arson on the neighbor's house. But they brought up all these other things that she had been suspected of committing in the past, because they said that was admissible. So I kind of feel like the jury was like, this fucking lady, she's insane. Now, what happened? So she got convicted of that attempted arson. And then later they said, hey, if you plead guilty or plead no contest to the other arson charges, then, you'll get a plea or whatever. But she didn't get like a really good deal. Now, she did plead no contest to the fire that had destroyed the garage where she kept their Airstream trailer, which also destroyed 4 other people's vehicles that were also being stored there. And it turned out that she had also done 2 more of the whole kerosene rag deals on 2 other people in the neighborhood who were both in her quilting group. So I don't really know if they just made her mad, I'm assuming. Because that's why I'm assuming she did that to the neighbor, because it's like he just pissed them off for some reason. And she's just like, oh, I'm going to get that motherfucker. I'm going to burn his fucking house down. But apparently that she had tried to do the same thing with 2 other people in the neighborhood that were in her quilting group. So because of that, she ended up getting 15 years, a 15-year sentence, which, I mean, you know, it seems like a lot, but considering her history, no. And considering the fact that she probably, like, murdered a bunch of people and didn't get caught, I'm not mad at it. So she was 60 years old at this point when she got sentenced to the 15 years. Now, here's another thing. The story's not over. Just wait. So at her sentencing, she asked the judge, can I please just have 24 more hours to make sure that my poor sickly husband, Wally, is taken care of? Like, you know, I need to make arrangements for him because he, you know, he's infirm and he won't get by without me. So the judge was kind of like reluctant, but he's like, okay, but, you know, we're going to have all these cops and shit like that, like watching you to make sure you don't like run off. You know what I mean? Because they, you know, they could have run to Mexico or whatever. So they followed her back to her house and they had patrols coming by. Now, one of the patrols that was coming by, and this was like 4 hours before they were supposed to come and like arrest her and like take her to jail, right? One of the cops comes by and happens to smell gas coming out of the house. So he knocks on the door. Marjorie answers and says, oh, everything's fine. You know, our pilot light just blew out on the stove. It's cool. Couple hours later, though, she calls some of her friends and relatives to tell them that Wally, her husband, was dead. So the cops come. Now he had been dead for several hours. And apparently somebody she called was like, well, why don't you call the cops? Oh, yeah, probably I should do that. But this was like many hours later. So she calls the cops. They come out. Now they find that there's like a piece of hose, which was, you know, she'd cut it off the garden hose. And it was kind of would reach from the oven to the bedroom because they had like an old gas stove. Right? Yeah. Also, they found a bunch of prescription pills next to the body. And there was also a double suicide note, which is, I read it. It's in that book, where she basically wrote this note saying, you know, thanks for everything you did. It was addressed to their attorney. And basically saying, thanks for everything you did, but we don't want everybody thinking, like, we've been framed up, and we don't want everybody thinking we did this, and blah, 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 and we're just going to go out together. We want to be buried in one big casket with our dog. I was like, so they're going to kill the dog? Like, to bury these 2 shitheels? Fuck you guys. You know what I mean? So it was that. But yeah, so she wrote this suicide. So her story was that her and Wally had a suicide pact, and he did it, but then she was going to do it too, and then she chickened out. So that was kind of her defense. That's what the letter said. Because she basically in the letter was like, yeah, we're out of here. Like, we're doing that. So the cops did not buy this, as you wouldn't. So she got arrested for murder. Now, they're kind of like trying to call a grand jury. And at this point, the prosecutors were not entirely sure they could get a murder conviction because they're like, well, had this been a double suicide and she just backed out of it, that might not be, like, people might sympathize. It's like, I don't think we can get a murder conviction. So they dropped the murder charge, even though they're pretty sure that she drugged him and then did the whole hose thing so it would look like they'd killed themselves, or tried to, like, that he tried to kill himself because he couldn't live without her because she was supposed to go off to prison the next day, right? So they were trying to make it look like that. So yeah, so she didn't even get put on trial for that. They just dropped the charges because they didn't think they'd be able to prove it. They're like, oh, well, that's some reasonable doubt they could introduce. Like, maybe it was a double suicide pact and, like, she just chickened out. You know what I mean? What are you going to do? When they did the autopsy, though, they did discover that Wally had not died of the gas, but had died of a drug overdose. And also, fun fact, the autopsy that they did of him found absolutely no sign of cancer, even though she had been saying for years and years and years that he had all kind of cancer and that he had all kinds of health problems, he had no cancer. 0 cancer. So the speculation is that she had been doing some Munchausen by proxy shit, and she was just like giving him all these drugs, and he didn't know what they were for.
Teddy says if you made a movie about this chick, nobody would believe it.
That's what I'm telling you.
That's why
this is fucking crazy.
That's why Tequila sent this book to us.
I was reading this and I'm like, no fucking way. Yeah. This is insane. It's insane. And the bitch is free. I mean, she's 91 now, but she's free now.
Crazy though.
Yeah. I mean, how many people has she killed at this point, allegedly? 5? That's serial killer shit.
Yeah.
And all the houses and shit she burned down.
Had this happened in the 1800s, she would have killed fucking dozens. Because they had women like this in the 1800s that there was no bookkeeping and no computers. You could get away with anything. But a chick like this would have done a lot of damage in the 1800s.
Yeah, she probably could have killed a lot more people.
Yeah.
Because, see, that's the thing. It's like everybody... I kind of feel like for a long time, like, all this was going on, and, like, a lot of people suspected her of shit, but she just, like, they couldn't prove it.
Yeah.
Like, in this case, it's like, they were pretty sure maybe, probably, she killed Wally, right? I mean, he died of a drug overdose. She probably drugged him. And she probably gave him a lot, because she'd been giving him a lot over the years to make him seem sickly, so she could get sympathy and attention and stuff like that. So she probably gave him a shit ton and then did the whole gas thing probably after he was already dead, like to make it look like they had this double suicide pact. But the thing about it was that the prosecution was like, well, we can't prove that that wasn't the case. And they didn't think it was worth pursuing. And they're like, well, she's already going to prison for all the arson and shit anyway. So I guess they didn't really feel like it was worth it.
She has all the fucking traits of a female serial killer.
She does. That's what I was thinking. Yeah. It's like, and if she did kill all the people that they suspected, because they think, remember, that she not only was, I mean, she didn't physically kill her mom, but they think that she maybe manipulated Roger into killing her mom. Also, they think that she killed Wally's first wife, Helen.
Yeah.
By giving her they were feeding her stuff out of baby food, and then all of a sudden, like the next day, she went into a coma. You know what I mean? So there was that. And like I said, she did try to maybe kill her mom with the marmalade, like earlier. So she was trying to poison people. So there was that. So, you know, serial killer. So they dropped the charges. And like I said, Wally didn't have any cancer, even though she had spent years saying that he had all this cancer. Like, I think she did like 3 different kinds of cancer. Now, so Wally's 3 kids, they're like, we want our dad's body back in Minnesota and to be buried next to the mom, like the first wife that he supposedly said he hated, even though he's married to her for 47 years, which I was like, even if that was true, why would you tell your daughter that? That just seems like so shitty. I kind of feel like at this point, maybe, I'm not exonerating him, but I think Marjorie was maybe drugging him and like playing with his mind and shit, because he was kind of old man at this point. Now, so the kids wanted his body back. Marjorie, who was in jail at this point, wouldn't let them have it because she's an asshole like that. So they had to go to court. And then finally, the judge said, okay, well, this is so fucked up. It's like, well, if you cremate the body, you can each have half the ashes. We're just like, okay. I mean, I guess it's better than cutting the body in half, but whatever. So Marjorie got the other half of the ashes, but the kids got the half. And at this point, after this whole brouhaha, that was when the kids first started thinking that maybe Marjorie had killed their mom, too, which I kind of suspect she probably did. Now, so Marjorie, she had a parole hearing in 2001, and 2 of Wally's kids were there, and she was trying to get early release. She didn't show any remorse for anything she had done. She's basically talking about Wally's children have been a thorn in my side. They've been fucking with me like all this time. She was always like someone else was fucking with her, like someone was fucking up her life. She never took responsibility for anything.
Not trying to make herself look like the victim.
Yeah, and she did that a lot. Yeah. If like I said, if you read the book,
dead giveaway.
Yeah, this book is like really good. Like, and it goes a lot into like her mindset.
Female serial killers are always trying to make themselves look like the villain, or excuse me, the victim. That goes all the way to the one we had down here in fucking Florida that was killing all the truck drivers. What was her name? Fucking
Aileen Wuornos.
Aileen Wuornos, yeah. Oh, they were trying to rape me.
Which maybe some of them were. Well, maybe the first one was. I think the first one was.
It's easier just to pay him.
Yeah.
And she was a fucking lot lizard. You know? Truckers have money. You know, a lot lizard like Eileen wasn't asking for a lot of money. Better to just give her the $35 or the $40 that she wanted. They weren't trying to rape her. She just needed a justification to kill and rob them. That's all it was.
I don't know. I suspect that maybe one did, because it does happen. I mean, you know.
Well, if you're in that business, that's going to happen.
That's going to happen. So I think maybe that did happen to her once, and she used that as justification.
But a normal lot lizard woman isn't going to fucking hold all the other truckers responsible.
Right.
For that one.
She did, though, because she was messed up.
Yeah, well, she needed to, because she wanted to kill dudes and take their money.
Yeah.
You know.
But yeah, so she kind of was just kind of like, yeah, they've been fucking with me all this time, blah blah blah. I should note that several of Marjorie's own children, I believe 5 of them, I think that Rick, her youngest, and Steven stood by her the whole entire time and defended her, but I think the other 5 were like, yeah, fuck that bitch. And were basically came to the parole hearing and said, please do not let her out. So, you know, that should tell you something too. So 2004, she was in prison for 10 years, and she got let out. Now, so after she was released in 2004, her lawyer, his name was Edward Boulding, he approached an author and wanted to write a book about her, because she wanted some money. Like, he said, basically, she's broke, and she wants to, like, make some money about it. So the author was like, nah, I don't think so. It's like, I kind of know about this case, and I know what happens with people that go into business with her, so no thank you. And then later it turned out that Marjorie had accused that same attorney, Edward Boulding, of stealing her money while she was in jail. Because even while she was in jail, she was still getting money from her from the estate. You know what I mean? Like, she was getting a stipend. I think it was $4,800 a month. Now, she couldn't spend it, obviously, because she was in jail, but it was still piling up in her account. So she should have had a lot of money when she got out, because she was in there for 10 years. And she was also getting Wally's pension, I believe. So there should have been a bunch of money in there, but she basically said, oh, that lawyer took it all. And she sued him, and she won, which is fucking crazy to me. So he got convicted of embezzling $1 million from her, which I don't know if he actually did that. I wouldn't believe it, because she was just doing that. And also, here's, like I said, the story's not over yet. So 3 years after she got out, 2007, she makes friends with an old man named Roger Samus at an assisted living home. And she said, hey, old man, I'll help you out with your finances.
Yeah.
Not surprisingly, he died not long after that. And then she kept writing checks to herself with his signature on them.
Yeah.
Like you do.
She had control over his bank account.
Yeah. So they tried
what the
I
fuck
mean,
she
obviously,
do that old man to get that privilege?
Sure, I don't know.
She's done her.
That's what I mean. Man. See, I don't get why, because, and especially when I read all the stuff about Wally Hagen, like, what the fuck was she doing to that dude to make? Because his kids said that he completely cut them off, and he was not like that before. They're like, he just became a completely different person, like, after he married her. And they couldn't figure it out. They're like, they didn't know, like, what she did to him. They didn't know if she was keeping him drugged or what the fuck.
Filled him full of a bunch of poison.
Yeah, she probably was just real persuasive. Yeah. And she's like, oh, those kids, they're just trying to... Because he would say shit later on, like, he didn't leave his kids any money in his will. Like, he left it all to her. And in his will, I think, or, you know, in something that he said, like, right before he died, he was basically like, those kids, they've just been draining me dry. And his kids were like, what the fuck? We didn't know what he was talking about. Like, we never took any of his money.
She was taking his money, saying it was
she did. Yeah. And so they think that she turn him against them by basically saying, "Oh, they're just a bunch of vultures," and they're trying to
take.
So she was real good at that.
She was taking his money, saying that it was them taking the money.
Yeah,
somehow.
I think that's probably what she was doing. Yeah. So she had him completely fucking stoned.
And he wasn't all mentally there.
Yeah, and that's what it was. He was older, and she probably had him on some weird ass drugs and shit like that too.
Yeah.
So so this old man dies, and she's like cashing in money like on his name. The cops couldn't figure out the cause of death because Marjorie had hit power of attorney on this dude and had him cremated before they could do anything. So she actually did get arrested, and she got charged with fraud and forgery for faking his signature, but she just got probation. Now, 3 years after that, she went and tried to get out of the probation so she could go to an assisted living facility, but the judge said no. So as far as I know now, Marjorie would be 91 years old. As far as I know, she's still alive. I couldn't find her obituary. I did find the obituary of her sister, Jennifer, who died a few years ago. But as far as I know, Marjorie is still alive and is probably still living in Tucson, Arizona. Probably still burning shit down, I'd imagine, because you can still do that when you're old.
At 91, that bitch is sleeping most of the time. Probably.
I hope so. Jesus Christ, all the shit she did. Holy crap. She just like ruined so many people's lives. I can't imagine. Weirdly, and I couldn't find anything about this, but they put in the back of this book, there's like a little epilogue, and there's like a article from the Minneapolis Star-Tribune. And this is so weird. So in 1999, Christy Caldwell O'Neill, who was the daughter of Roger Caldwell, who, if you'll remember, was Marjorie's second husband, who was convicted and exonerated of killing her adopted mom. So his daughter may have, allegedly, suffocated her own mother, Roger's ex-wife, who he was married to before Marjorie, with a pillow. Just like Roger had allegedly done to Elizabeth. And then Christy kept her mom, who was 65, in the house for 2 weeks, buried beneath a bunch of salt in a cardboard coffin in the basement. And once they found the body, like once the cops found the body, Christy was found dead in her car, apparently after having committed suicide. And that was Roger Caldwell's daughter. Isn't that fucking weird?
Yeah.
Holy crap. So, yeah. So, honestly, like I said, the family in the trust, like after Elizabeth died, the Glensheen mansion was donated to the University of Minnesota Duluth. I believe there was kind of like a period where, you know, her relatives or her, descendants and stuff could live in the house at their discretion or whatever. But after a time, they, donated it so people could come and tour it. So 2 years after the murder, they actually opened it for public tours and things like that. But as I said, they don't usually talk about the murder on the tour unless you specifically ask them about it, because they don't really want to focus on that. So wasn't that fucking crazy?
That's interesting.
That fucking bitch, man.
Yeah, thank you to Caleb's for sending this to us.
I got super into this. I was reading all kind of shit. I'm like, oh my god, I can't fucking believe this lady.
If any of y'all have any weird cases you want us to talk about, you can send us the books or the information, or at least a fucking a link to some kind of case that Jen can research, and we'll do a show on it. We'll talk about it. But this is an interesting one.
Because you don't hear a lot about. Because I feel like this woman.
Yeah.
I guess you don't hear a lot about it because she was never convicted of murder. But had she been convicted of all the murders she was suspected of, she would for sure be a serial killer.
This is a serial killer case.
I mean, she's a very serial killer.
She fits the profile of a female
really
character.
big time.
Right.
She even has the whole arson thing.
Arson, poisoning,
manipulation.
It's a long-term
fraud,
low simmer that they do. She's like something out of the fucking 1800s.
That's what it kind of reminded me of. It reminded me of somebody like Belle Gunnis or somebody like that. Well, I mean, Belle Gunnis, she was a lot more upfront with the shit. She would just hit you in the head with a shovel and take all your stuff and just bury you.
But this was a very common phenomenon in the 1800s.
It was.
But it kind of tapered off in more modern times. 1800s, 1900s, you didn't hear this kind of shit died off. But she's like a blast from the past.
And it's like, it's weird to me because as blatant as the shit that she was doing was, it seems like they could never really pin anything on her.
Yeah.
I mean, they didn't really get her until they got her for arson, and she was like 60 years old at that point.
Yeah.
Think of all the shit that she had probably done up to then.
Had she been alive today, she would have been doing something like Munchausen by proxy.
Yeah, she seemed to like give me she gave me that vibe too. Because especially with all the shit about I think she was keeping Wally sick all that time and telling everybody he had cancer when he didn't.
Yeah, Munchausen by proxy.
And the thing, and she also said she would also kind of exaggerate. Well, she said that her son, was it Rick or Steven? I think it was Ricky. Said that he had real bad asthma. Now he said that he did, and like he couldn't do stuff, but I think she was exaggerating like how bad his health was. You know what I mean? Like, so she was one of those people that's just like, oh my god, he's fucking dying, when maybe it wasn't really that bad. So she seemed very attention seeking. There was that.
How long was the show?
It's 10:30 now, so
2 hours and a half.
3 hours.
3 hours.
About 3 hours.
Yeah. You ready to go get something to eat tomorrow?
Yeah, I would like. Well, wait tomorrow.
Yeah, we're gonna get something to eat tomorrow. We'll either do. You want to do Thai or you want to do Mexican?
I don't know. We'll see what mood I'm in tomorrow. Because I don't really know.
It'll be either one. We got to do the fucking mail though. All right, you got to drop off the fucking.
I know you got returns.
Got returns.
Like I said, that you got to do. And then Saturday.
Yeah.
I have to go to my stepdad's.
I'll take you there.
Funeral.
Yeah. Yeah.
At noon.
We'll go.
So.
Okay, Jen, shut it down.
Yeah, we can shut it down. Okay. So thank you very much to Keelips / Mutt for sending us the books. Like I said, I had never heard of this case, and this shit was like fucking fascinating. I think I read that book I read it in two like big chunks. I read like half of it and then I read the other half of it like before the show, and I was just like, this is fucking crazy.
You said her dressing room reading it.
Yeah, yeah.
She's on the floor with the cat.
Well, because the light is good in there.
Yeah.
He came in and laughed at me because I was sitting on the floor like by the window because the light's not great in here. It's kind of too dark for me to read because I can't see all that good. Yeah. So I would go in my dressing room next door because there's a real big window and it's bright. So I was sitting there by the window and like Bambi came in and like just curled up like next to me. So I'm sitting there like on the floor like with Bambi like when I'm reading the book and stuff. Tom's like, "What the fuck are you doing sitting on the floor?" And I'm just like, "I can't see in my office." But yeah, but it was a really good. Both of the books were really good, but that one was like fucking fascinating. And I can't believe that I never heard of this case because this shit's insane.
Yeah, too. She outlived everyone.
Yeah, she's still. As far as I know, she's still alive. I couldn't find her obituary. Yeah. I found her sister's obituary, Jennifer, but I didn't find hers. So as far as I know, she's still alive. She's out. She's not in prison anymore.
Justice was not served.
She got out in 2004, and then she was on probation for several years too.
Seemingly, justice was not served, as far as we know.
No, like I said, I think she killed a lot more people and set a lot more fires than she got convicted for. So, and she only ended up serving 10 years in prison for all of the shit that she did, which is insane. But yeah, so we're gonna wrap it up. I might stream tomorrow because I do have a movie review prepared. It's actually for the 2022-2023 movie called Brooklyn 45, which is on Shudder. So if you want to watch that, I might talk about it tomorrow. It's actually good. It's set during like right after World War II, and it's like a seance type movie.
Yeah.
And I quite liked it. So
based on what we said today, we really ought to work out some kind of a Mae West show. Maybe you should put that in.
Yeah, let me write that under here.
Yeah, put that in the running, and they'll vote on it. But I would love to do a show on Mae West.
I would too, actually.
Mae West was fucking. She was quite a player and way ahead of her time, and there was a lot of funny shit. And on YouTube, there's a lot of fucking cool clips of Mae West saying some shit back in the 30s. All right, that you can relate to. You're like, yeah, that's the way it really is, because she was a realist, especially when it came to sex. Yeah, she's just a good character.
I kind of feel like if you transported her to modern times, she would probably fit right in.
Oh yeah, she'd love it,
and we could like hang out.
She'd love it today. She'd be on OnlyFans.
Oh, big time.
Yeah.
She, like I said, she would fit right in. She's just like, oh, okay, we have this now. All right,
and
I can do that.
As being in the fitness scene and being kind of a bodybuilder myself, fucking West introduced fucking Bronze era or maybe Silver era bodybuilding to the masses because she liked muscle. She liked raw man muscle. She didn't care what race it was. As long as you looked good, she'd go out with you. And that was a lot of her fucking shtick later on, is to have muscle men around her. They probably wouldn't be muscle men compared by today's standards, but she liked dudes that were shirtless, and she'd tell jokes and fucking go, yeah, that's all beef there. You know,
well, she was just kind of like getting back, because, you know, there's been a long thing of like dudes with like all these hot women like on there. So she's like, man, I'm going to do that.
Yeah,
fucking
that's
shit.
exactly
She flipped it around.
She was bringing female sexuality to the mainstream of like.
And everybody's like, oh yeah, I guess so.
We like meat too. You know what I mean? And that was her game.
Yeah. Not quite in the same way, but similar. It's not that different.
No.
Not that different.
Positive sexism. You know, she was saying what she liked.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is that's cool. That's a woman's prerogative.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
We should do a show about her.
I'll
put it in the
She
poll.
was a great character. Yeah.
The poll's going up Friday morning if you're
all right.
As always, if you're, because I am doing a poll this week. I didn't do one this week because we were doing this topic because I wanted to, but yeah, the poll goes up Friday at 10 a.m. Eastern time on Patreon and on YouTube. So if you're a YouTube member or you're on our Patreon, then you can vote in the poll as always. Yeah. So that will go up Friday morning, and I will put the Anthrax thing and Mae West in the poll.
Yeah.
Among other things. So we'll see what wins. All right. So as I said, I might do a movie review tomorrow, probably in the afternoon. We'll see how it goes, because I do have one kind of ready to go. And I guess that will do it for the show. Like I said, thank you again, Mutt /Tequilips, for sending us the books. I really did like them, and I didn't know anything about this case, and this was crazy as shit. So hopefully you guys enjoyed it as much as we enjoyed talking about it. And we will see you guys again. Both of us will see you again on Friday night.